mankind needs to move forward, and we're not going to be moving forward so long as NASA keeps us living in this fantasy world.
Ladies and gentlemen, beloved of America!
These guys are not going to deter me from completing my objective, and that's proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that the moon missions were faked, and it's an ongoing battle to the finish, I guess, and I'm going to continue doing it until I either die or NASA publicly acknowledges that the moon missions were faked. I am not afraid to die for the sake of the truth, and if I have to put my life on the line just to get to the truth, then so be it. It's going to be quite a show, I can promise you that.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, Banal of America Audio, with your host, Tim Banal.
What is going on, my friends? This is Tim Banal of BanalofAmerica.com with another edition of BOA Audio Season 6. Lots of in-house notes to discuss, but we're going to save those for the end of the program because I don't want to bore people who've been waiting way too long for this episode, and in the future, these in-house notes will make no sense at all. So tune in to the end of the program if you want to find out what's going on with these technical difficulties we've had the last few weeks. And before we dive into this week's edition of the program, of course, we got to give kudos and thanks to Peter Diggins, who supplied the theme music for this week's installment of BOA Audio. You can find out more from him at www.aurophonic.com, and that's spelled AUROPHONIC.com. If you're a musician out there and you want to contribute a song to BOA Audio for a future installment of the program, you can do that by writing to boaaudio@hotmail.com, and I'd be happy to give your tunes a listen. Now, let's get down to business on this edition of BOA Audio as we return to the realm of the moon hoax theory with our guest, Jera White, known as the grandson of moon hoax theory. Chances are, if you listen to this, you've heard a lot of paranormal audio over the years, and you've heard the moon hoax theory discussed and dissected countless times. I know I have. So I went into this conversation with Jera White with a whole different perspective. I really wanted to explore the world of moon hoax theory. How did it start? How did it evolve? And why is it so potent on both sides of the argument? Those are sort of the areas we're going to be covering here in this conversation. Jera is going to tell us about the man who really kicked off moon hoax theory, Bill Kaysing, and then the man who he turned the baton over to, Ralph Renee, and how those two men led to Jera White becoming the grandson of the moon hoax theory. We're going to really get into what is, I think, one of the most fascinating aspects of the moon hoax theory, and that is the passionate stances taken by both sides of the moon hoax debate. The people who insist we went to the moon and the folks who are adamant that we did not. They are both just fired up about their sides in this argument, more so than almost any other paranormal genre. So that's fascinating to me, and we're going to explore that with Jera White, because really he has become the face and voice of moon hoax theory here in the new millennium. Speaking of these vitriolic stances from both sides of the moon hoax debate, we're going to hear about Jera's encounters with Phil Plait, the Mythbusters, and Buzz Aldrin. He's confronted all these folks with serious questions about the moon landing, and you're going to find out about how those encounters went down. We're also going to explore conspiracies surrounding the Apollo 1 and Challenger shuttle disasters, and we'll get into the meta levels of the moon hoax theory debate, including why in 2011 whether or not we went to the moon still matters. Why is this a huge issue anymore? It was 40 plus years ago. We're going to get into all that, plus tons and tons more, really a slew of challenging questions covering this most peculiar genre of esoterica. It really is one of the more odd corners in the world of the paranormal, and altogether it is an edition of BOA Audio that takes a fair look at an often dismissed and highly controversial area of the paranormal with the man who has championed it here in the new millennium, Jera White. Before we get to Jera's bio and background, I want to give props to Michael, a BOA Audio listener who wrote to us last year and suggested we have Jera on the program. As we say all the time here on the show, it is your program, my friends. BOA Audio belongs to the listeners, and once again, the influence of the audience is on display here with this installment of BOA Audio. Now, for those of you who are unfamiliar with Jera White, allow me to provide you with a little background on him. Jera White is a native of Australia who debunks the Apollo hoax debunkers, both in forums and through film. He holds academic qualifications in film and TV at Sydney Institute of TAFE and is currently doing his BSc in astrophysics. Since 2006, he has produced over 300 videos on the subject of the Apollo moon hoax theory. These include the ongoing Moon Faker series, Flagging the Gems, and Apollo Zero. He is the contributing editor to moonmovie.com and is considered by many to be the honorary heir of Ralph Renee, author of NASA Mooned America. He's got a new website coming out soon, maybe online by now. You can find that at www.moonfaker.com. And you can check out a slew of his films at his YouTube channel, youtube.com/WhiteJera, and you spell that White, W-H-I-T-E, and then J-A-R-R-A-H. Links all over All of America, so be sure to check out his films on YouTube. And with all that said, let's get down to business, my friends, and rock and roll. This interview was recorded on March 26, 2011. Jera White, direct from Sydney, Australia, talking about the moon hoax theory on BOA Audio Season 6. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of BOA Audio Season 6. And I'm sure we're about to embark on what is certainly going to be a controversial episode in a lot of ways, but I'm personally really looking forward to this conversation. Our guest calls himself the grandson of moon hoax theory, and we'll get into that sort of affectation, if you will, in a little bit, but I really think that that is certainly very apropos, because he's really carrying on the tradition of moon hoax theory now. He certainly seems like the third generation of researchers here to really be a proponent of the moon hoax theory and challenge the mainstream perception of what happened there in the late 1960s. And he's doing a fantastic job of it, I'll give him that. Personally, I'm not a huge proponent of the moon hoax theory, but I leave the door open for it, and that's why we're having this conversation here on the show, and especially because I'm very interested in the moon hoax theory community and how this field has evolved over the years. And as I said, he really is sort of the cutting edge of moon hoax theory right now. He is the driving force behind the field in a big way, and he's really changed the way moon hoax theory is showcased with his amazing YouTube channel. You can find that at youtube.com/WhiteJera. And actually, I should point out, too, that he is a guest who was requested by one of the BOA Audio listeners. So as we like to say from time to time here on the program, you know, you call out for the guests and we'll bring them on the program to showcase their work and talk about their research. I've been sitting back and enjoying a lot of his films here for the better part of the last couple of days. There's like over 400 movies on his YouTube channel, not just dealing with the moon hoax theory, but dealing with other stuff as well, and really fantastically produced stuff. I got to give him credit for that. I mean, these are things that you could easily imagine seeing on television. They're very well made, so kudos to him. I'm talking about Jera White, coming to us all the way from Sydney, Australia, 15 hours ahead of us. Hopefully tomorrow is looking good already, and I'm looking forward to talking to him and having him here on the program and delving into the moon hoax theory, and I hope all you folks out there are going to come along for the ride as well. Jera, welcome to BOA Audio. It's a real thrill to have you on the program.
It's good to be here. So on.
Well, let's start out with the bio, the background. You know, who is Jera White, and how did you get turned on to the moon hoax theory?
Well, when I was a young kid, you know, I was always interested in space and you know, space travel, exploration, that sort of stuff. And I kept studying it well into my teenage years and stuff. And ultimately, I wanted to be an astronaut. You know, someday I wanted to be the first man on Mars. You know, because I looked up to these astronauts. You know, these guys who were, you know, said to have been the guys who went to the moon and all that. You know, and I studied the Apollo program. I studied the solar system, the galaxy, and everything else. But a few years later, right, this is like much later, right, in my much later in my life, I see this program about how how they're saying that, the moon missions were faked, and we all say, oh, this is interesting. Could this be true? So what I did, initially I took it with a grain of salt, right? But I went back to everything I had previously learned about astronomy and astrophysics and stuff, and I read online, read into the books, the various videos and stuff that the conspiracy theorists were putting out, and along the way, obviously as well, I came across all these pro NASA websites, and what became pretty clear to me is that, compared to everything I knew, everything I'd learned since, and so forth, it became pretty clear to me that these pro-NASA websites were essentially just propaganda sites. They, rather than actually disprove the argument, they bombard their readers with this pseudoscience garbage, and in turn as well, they also go out of their way to libel the other side of the argument. They go out to libel those on who were saying that this was all faked. By essentially like putting words in their mouth, or lying about their background, and all this diatribe that's going on. And so I finally felt, look, it's time for some guy to stand up, and finally show for what these propagandists really are. They're just that. They're just propagandists. That's all they ever say on the internet, is just propaganda. And so initially I started writing up this enormous long essay, that I was going to be like posting on the Bill Keesing tribute site, this long essay countering the thing, right? And when I finally worked on it for about a year or so, and when I finally finished it, I'm like, well, this thing's like, bigger than a phone book,
Yeah.
And plus I also needed to turn back on some sort of some less than polite things I had to say about the opponents, obviously. But so eventually I decided, look, why don't you just take various pieces of it and just adapt it into a video. Originally it was going to be one long video, but then I realized that would take way too long to cover in just one single film. So what became of that became the Moonfaker series. Just each series like delves into a specific topic, be it radiation, or be it television broadcasts, or lighting, or whatever and stuff. And so it's pretty much how the Moonfaker series came about.
Okay, so you sort of got into this like in the last 5 years or so, basically.
Yeah, I first got involved in the first Moonfaker came out in 2006, and I've been producing these videos since then, and shortly after the release of my first series, the lads from moonmovie.com, they saw my films and they said, hey, how would you like to come work with us? They had a project that they were working on and stuff, and they asked, hey, would you like to help us put this together? And I said, okay. And so that project was Apollo 0, which is a public domain film. And over that time, I also worked on the GEMS series, which was basically there was flagging the GEMS, and there was Apollo 11, the little gem, which was the former of which was this video that was proving that the Apollo 10 telecast, this was the mission before Armstrong. They supposedly went to the moon to try out the lunar module and stuff, and during that mission they sent back a whole bunch of television transmissions showing the Earth viewed from a distance and stuff. Well, I got the raw footage of this. It was sold by the group Spacecraft Films and stuff. And what I did, I compared it to the official transcript, and what it turned out is that the actual supposed live television transmissions and all that, they were in fact edited, pre-filmed and edited together. Because there'd be times when they're like looking back at the Earth, okay, they're just like commenting on it and stuff. Then all of a sudden the camera would just cut from one angle to another, like, okay, it would be sort of zoomed out away from the Earth, and suddenly would cut to a closer image or slightly off-center image or whatever and stuff. Mm-hmm. And yet the audio would still run continuous, unedited, uninterrupted, I should say. So basically the audio was synced to this edited footage. They only had one TV camera in the capsule, right? So there's no possible way that could happen. So I produced this video flagging the GEMS, and I posted it up on my old YouTube account. My old YouTube account was Dara White, it's now White Dara. But see, what happened is that when I posted this video, I also pointed out that pieces of existing Apollo 10 footage had been omitted from the so-called complete and unedited Spacecraft Films DVD. And so I posted this video basically pointing this out. And what happened, the guy who runs Spacecraft Films, a guy called Mark Gray, he went in and filed copyright infringement against this video that I put out and got my account suspended, my old account. And, you know, his claim is, his copyright claim is fraudulent because the footage in question is public domain. He's got no copyright claim to it.
Weird. Mm. Well, that just goes to show you how intense this moon hoax debate is. You kind of alluded to it earlier. It's vitriolic on both sides. It's very remarkable how passionate both sides of the moon hoax debate are. It's very interesting in that way.
I guess so. Of course, you start to get really, really hostile people who just go out and just go nuts on you. Recently, one guy went as far as photoshopping pictures of his opponents, pictures of the moon hoax conspiracy theorists, including myself. I mean, very antagonizing ways. Like one of them went as far as putting my face onto a vagina. I kid you not.
What?
That's how
oh my
God! Sick these blokes are.
That's just weird. Oh boy.
Yeah.
I don't know. That says more about him than you, so I wouldn't take it personal. Now, you call yourself the grandson of the moon hoax theory. So talk a little bit about the evolution of this whole thing, you know, where it started, and how it ended up, you know, sort of in your hands. You're kind of the caretaker of the moon hoax theory nowadays. And as I said earlier, you've taken it sort of into this new generation, and especially with the YouTube work that you're doing. I mean, that's the cutting edge, really, of sort of esoterica right now in a lot of ways. And I think that's how you've really done a great job of positioning yourself and sort of breathing new life into the moon hoax theory. So, I mean, talk about how it got to this point, though, as far as the moon hoax theory itself.
Okay, well, in the beginning, right, this is way back in the 50s. Bill Casing, he was working at Rocketdyne, which was one of the companies that designed and built the engines for the Saturn rocket, and evidently the space race began, you know, with Sputnik and all that. And so during the 1960s, he worked at Rocketdyne between the late 50s and early 1960s. And in 1961, right, a clandestine organization called Apollo Simulation Project was formed, you know, by NASA and the Defense Intelligence Agency and stuff. And, you know, Bill Casing, because he was very involved in at Rocketdyne, he worked as a service engineer and analyst and stuff. You know, he was like checking over all the engines prior to launch and testing and whatever and stuff. And so basically, he was very aware of this organization, which they were basically proposing all these ideas on how they could go about simulating flights to the moon and purport them to be the real thing. You know, one of them was basically to have the astronauts, go up the elevator, go into the capsule, and then come back down the elevator again, you know, and just launch the capsule unmanned. And during this time, all the information, all the voices and videos and so forth, they all came from pre-recorded tapes that were then relayed over the landlines to the guys at Houston. You know, the guys at Houston, they don't really need to know or care where the data comes from. You know, they just, okay, here it is, it's coming from NASA's manned space flight center. Okay, well, must be true then. You know, that's the way they operated and stuff.
Right.
Anyways, Casing, he was aware of all these proposals, right, but he left before the actual faking took place. And, you know, he avoided, you know, he didn't pay that much attention to the subsequent moon landings and that sort of stuff, because, like, you know, he just couldn't you know, generate enthusiasm for watching a phony project, you know, pulled off, you know, so he didn't watch the first moon landing or anything like that. And some years later, right, because like he was very he had a habit of like bringing homeless people to his houseboat and stuff, you know, just to accommodate, you know, the homeless and stuff.
Yeah.
And one of them was this fellow by the name of John Grant, who was this former Vietnam veteran, right? And basically he had you know, regrets about going into war and stuff. And so one night he and Bill Casing were like talking, and he's like, Bill, I was conned into believing what I did was patriotic, you know, but it was all bullshit. You know, he says, why don't you blow the whistle on this rotten, corrupt government? And he's speaking in satirical terms, right? He says, why don't you say something outrageous like we never went to the moon? You know, Grant was still talking about doing a satirical project, but, you know, Casing, because of his inside knowledge and stuff, he also recently learned about Thomas Ronald Barron, who was the safety inspector, who was, saw all the poor workmanship, all the design and safety violations and stuff that went into the Apollo 1 capsule. And after he testified after the fire about how bad things were, he was found dead in a car accident. Casey had recently learned about this bloke, and John Grant, he comes up and he says, why don't you do the satirical project? Say, hey, why don't you say we never went to the moon and stuff? Well, Grant, he was obviously talking about doing a spoof, but Casey ultimately decided to do a serious project, because of his inside knowledge and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And so he began writing a book. The book was called We Never Went to the Moon, which basically discussed all these proposals that the Apollo simulation project had discussed during his time at Rocketdyne. And so basically you could call him the Apollo whistleblower, I guess, if you like. But most people refer to him as the father of the moon hoax theory. Now, his book, it was very well done, but it was mostly about all the proposals and stuff like that. He didn't really, surprisingly, he delved into very little photographic anomalies or any of the science stuff. Of course, he did discuss the F1 engine problems and all that sort of stuff. But another bloke by the name of Ralph Rene, he was an ex-member of Mensa, the High IQ Society. Yeah. He was a self-taught engineer. Of course, he did do college and stuff, but, just didn't finish to get degrees and stuff. But, he was very gifted. He managed to get into Mensa, which, that requires IQ in the top 2%. Anyways, he was contacted, this was in the 80s, I think. He was contacted by the Rand Corporation for any free ideas that he may have on space travel. Like, hey, do you have any free ideas for poor old NASA? And, okay, so basically he wrote, because he had a couple patents, so he wrote up some ideas, for space travel. I don't know what they were exactly, but basically he wrote up a few ideas, and he sent them out to the Rand Corporation. They never wrote back to him. They never said thank you or anything like that. But a few years later after that, right? This was before before he started doubting the moon missions, right? He was a believer back then, and they contacted him basically asking him for free ideas and stuff like that. And so basically, a few years after he sent out those ideas, he picks up on Bill Casing's book, and he starts to wonder. He also picked up on another bloke's book by the name of William Bryan. Bryan, he didn't doubt the moon missions, but he did point out various anomalies. But his belief in Apollo led him to wrong conclusions. Like he saw the flag where he said, "Oh, the moon must have an atmosphere then," or the astronauts aren't jumping very high. Okay, they must have stronger gravity then. But basically, that opened his eye up to various anomalies and stuff. Renee's eyes to anomalies, and so a few years later, this is I think this was in 1990, I think, but he receives this glossy booklet from the government printing office, America at the Threshold, it was called, which was basically this idea for this thing called Project Outreach, which was basically a manned mission to Mars. Basically proposing this stuff. And basically, this thing was a propaganda booklet. Basically talking about this NASA's upcoming trip to Mars, which was only going to cost them like $1 trillion. He looked at this thing and he was like, $1 trillion! And so anyways, he's just reading through this, looking through the drawings and stuff. He gets to page A51 in the appendix, all right? And, which is basically a whole list of names of all the contributors, everyone who sent them ideas, and he finds his name smack dead in the middle of this booklet, which is basically a propaganda, leaflet thing, basically telling people about how we're going to be going to Mars next and stuff.
Weird.
And so basically, because this means basically that one of his ideas that he sent to the Rand Corporation got approved. And so now they were using him like he was one of their supporters, they were using his name like that. And so finally, sort of angered by them using his name for something that he no longer believed in, if you're not going to be able to get to the moon, how are you going to get to Mars and stuff? And so he began looking through he went to the library, picked up all these books written by these Apollo astronauts and stuff. Like looked at what they were. Some of their statements were just contradictory, and some of a lot of the photos they just didn't add up. And so finally he picked up some other books written by various various scientists, like James Van Allen, for example. He wrote a few magazine articles and stuff. In the beginning, Van Allen was saying that the radiation was deadly for humans, the radiation of the radiation belts. There's radiation belts that encircle the Earth, and in the beginning he was saying that, this stuff is deadly, we're not being able to get through there because shielding is beyond engineering feasibility and stuff. He also picked up on other science books, like one by Prospects for Interstellar Travel, which was by a guy called John H. Malden, who was a astrophysicist for NASA. He was proposing 2 meters of shielding to protect humans against the radiation of solar flares and radiation belts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so basically, Rene was basically reading through all these books, jotting down footnotes, information, all this dirt that he picked up on NASA and stuff. Once he's finally done reading through all this stuff, he contacts Bill Casing and he says, "Look, Bill, this is what I got on NASA. Here's all the dirt that I've got, blah, 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 da, 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 da." Okay, that's all that. And Bill, he was impressed by this and he says, "Well, why don't you write it into a book? If you do, I'll publish it." Okay. And so he writes up a book called A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon. That was the working title. The finished title was NASA Mooned America, right, which is considered by many to be the most comprehensive book on this whole conspiracy thing. And so basically he wrote it up and then he sent it off to Bill Casing to publish it. But Bill's wife got sick, and instead of using the money to publish the book, he used it to pay for her medical bills and stuff like that. And so Rene, he turned to some other guy, a guy called Jim Collier. He was going to publish it, but the publication date kept getting pushed back and back again and again and again. And so finally he published the book himself. And so I guess you could call him the father of the moon hoax, because Bill Casing was evidently the grandfather, and Rene, he basically the next generation up. And so finally, when I began my investigation into this whole moon landing stuff, I managed to get in touch with Ralph Rene, and he basically granted me interviews over the phone and sent me a whole basically stacks of his papers and basically all this information on Apollo and stuff like that, all these videos that he had, all these papers and stuff.
Yeah.
Basically, he left everything to me and stuff. Some people have considered me Rene's heir because, I went out of my way to defend him a lot, from these propagandists on the internet and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I made sure his research was out there. Because his book surprisingly didn't get as much attention as most of the propaganda stuff that's on the internet. Most of them before I came out, most of them didn't even read his book. They only knew his research from the few interviews he had given on the television and stuff.
Right. How other people picked up aspects of his argument and used them as for the moon hoax. I heard. Yeah,
exactly.
Segments.
Half of them didn't even hear the name.
Well, I've heard segments, of interviews with him where he just points out that, a lot of the moon hoax theory is just people using what's in his book. So I can see how you are the heir in a way, as you say, because if he left all this stuff to you, he passed away in December of 2008. You're sort of carrying on his legacy. Yeah. And like I said, you're the third generation of this. What's Bart Sibrel then? Sort of like the wacky uncle?
Well, there were two. The Bart Sibrel, he came along and he certainly helped to get the moon hoax the attention in the TV media, I guess. But he never really took on an official title and stuff. But because I believe he only knew Casing and Rene during the production, because he actually interviewed the two guys during the production of A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon. Yeah. Originally it was just going to be a film about, okay, maybe how this might have been a hoax and stuff like that, but then later on he picks up this footage and stuff, and this footage basically showing that the Apollo 11 mission was faked, where they were putting a transparency over the window, a transparent picture of the Earth over the window, letting the light from the other side shine through, making it look as though it's the Earth far away when they turn the capsule interior lights out and stuff. Yeah. And so basically he included that footage in his book. That he produced another film as well, Astronauts Gone Wild, in which he interviewed or encountered, most of them were like, speaking at public places and stuff, basically, in which he tries to get the astronauts to swear on a Bible and stuff.
Oh, yeah, everybody knows about his run-in with Buzz Aldrin, yeah.
Yeah. I actually met Buzz Aldrin just a few months ago, as a matter of fact. But I'll get into them shortly. But so anyway, Sabrell, he produced these videos. He later released the footage that he received on another DVD as well. But he retired from the moon hoax thing about a few years ago in I think it was 2006, I believe it was. And basically, shortly after that, I was approached by the lads from moonmovie.com, and they said, "Would you like to join our little team?" And I said, "Okay, sure." And that's how that went about, I guess. So in the beginning, moonmovie.com was promoting purely Sabrell's work and stuff. But now the site is mostly moon hoax in general, not just Sabrell's work, but also David Percy's work, Jim Collier's work, Ralph Renee's work, obviously, Bill Casing's, and of course they've got links to all my various moon faker videos and stuff. So
Sabrell retired?
Yeah, he retired a while back. Yeah.
Interesting. Did he give any reason, or was it just sort of?
I'm not sure the reason why, but I don't delve into other people's personal reasons and stuff.
Yeah.
My style.
Yeah. No, I was wondering if he made a statement that he was retiring, or he just sort of decided not to pursue it anymore, or what. That's all. Very interesting. Okay, so that's sort of how it led up to you sort of carrying on this tradition, and you make a good, interesting point here that Casing sort of laid out sort of the idea, and Renee sort of filled in a lot of the details, if you will. Is that kind of how it shook out over the years? Yeah,
pretty much. Basically, Casing, he was the guy who blew the whistle on the Apollo simulation project. Renee came along and backed up most of what he said with technical data and scientific research and stuff like that. And then I came along and basically helped, get their work out and, pick up on a lot more of the current stuff. Because, like, if you understand, like, they wrote their books. The first one was written in the 70s. Renee's book was written in the 90s. Of course, it received a few updates here and there, as the years went by. But my series, it gets all their information out to the next generation and picks up on all the new information of this generation right now. Like there's been a whole lot of new stuff that's been popping up lately and stuff. Like the Smart 1 crashing into the moon and finding out that the minerals, the actual rocks that are actually up there on the moon are different to the ones that we have, from the Apollo missions. Like if you go to the moon, pick up a moon rock, and then you send a probe to crash there and pick up moon dust for you to analyze, you'd expect to get the same results, yet the stuff that's actually up there is different.
So that's sort of like a new development in moon hoax research.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of new developments coming up, and there's a whole lot of new stuff that I've been meaning to discuss. But regrettably, I've been a little sidetracked lately. What with with propagandists constantly, releasing all this bullshit on the internet and stuff. So okay, this is back in 2008. I just released my radioactive anomaly film, and I was working on Moonfaker Exhibit D, which was a film about the moon rocks and laser reflectors and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And Renee, he passed away. He committed suicide.
He committed suicide.
Yeah. See, as you might already be aware, Renee, he was he worked for many years hard labor, like as a construction worker and stuff like that. And he basically did both his knees in and stuff with arthritis. And you know how badly the Medicare is in the United States. He couldn't get health coverage. He couldn't get the operations. They subjected him to pre-operation stress tests that an Olympic athlete with a strained walker couldn't pass, let alone a man on a walker. And that's the way he had been for the rest of his life. And so. And what made matters worse is in December he was in this car accident with his girlfriend, and the crash, it worsened his regular hip pain to the point it became an insomniac.
My goodness.
And so, I know, and so it was very, very tragic, very tragic. He could just not able to take the pain anymore. He 2 days after the accident, he asked his girlfriend to go home early. He had prepared a bunch of goodbye cards, to send out to his friends and stuff. And basically he left his will there for his neighbor to find, and he He put a shotgun in his mouth.
My God.
Yeah. And so, obviously, I was devastated when I heard that news. I was the one who actually announced his death publicly, and it was very, very, very upsetting for me.
Wow.
But what came upsetting even more was when propagandists they began releasing videos basically celebrating his death, putting words in his mouth and stuff like that, alleging that he thought dinosaurs coexisted with humans and such bullshit like that. Basically, it's bad enough that you attack some guy who's dead and no longer able to defend themselves. It's but they're just treating it like it's a celebration and stuff.
Yeah, that's disgusting. No matter if you disagree with the guy, that's one thing. But well, as I said, this is a very vitriolic debate. I mean, it is.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't see this with Bigfoot or even with UFOs anymore. I mean, you just don't. Or maybe with the 9/11 thing, but even then, it's not as just vicious on both sides of the equation. It's runs very deep, and you wonder why that is. I mean, do you have an opinion on why people are so passionate one way or the other about this moon hoax or the moon landing, concept?
Well, as you probably might be aware, there are a lot of Americans. They consider the alleged first landing on the moon as a source of national pride. Like, oh, look at it, this is our greatest achievement. It's always ever going to be the biggest thing we've ever done. It's never going to be topped by anyone and stuff. But some people might be hurt by the fact that this didn't really happen. It was just a propaganda hoax, and so some people might be very vigilant. Some people they just don't want to believe It's like a kid when they just find out that Santa Claus doesn't exist, When they initially they want to deny it, they don't want to believe it or anything like that. But when the facts get too overwhelming for them to deal with, it just becomes clear that this is all hoax, And so what they've been praising all their life is a lie. And of course, some people they just come to accept that. But then you've got others who know that they're lying, and they just continuously tell bullshit to protect that lie. The guy, Phil Plait, for example, he runs the Bad Astronomy website. He constantly put words in Bill Casey's mouth, like alleging that he believed all space travel in general was impossible. And Bill Casey made no such statements. And in fact, in the very same interview that Plait often referred to, Casey explicitly said that possibly the unmanned surveyor did land on the moon. That counts as space travel, doesn't it?
That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, exactly. So Plait, he's just lying there. And in fact, I actually went to TAM8 just last year, the amazing meeting, this James Randi convention thing where Plait was appearing. Basically tried to, I went there to question Plait about a few things. One of them was the fact that he has constantly put words in Bill Casey's mouth. And basically I encounter him, he tells me to go schedule an interview and stuff. It was like they got some press guys organizing interviews and stuff. I go walking around the place for about an hour or so. I can't find anyone. I can't find the press agent. I meet him again just during the break to question him about Operation Dirty Trick, which was an idea to blame Cuba for the death of John Glenn if he died in space. And yet he claims the idea that NASA murdered the Apollo 1 crew is a loathsome accusation. And well, how do you explain Operation Dirty Trick then? I showed him the document. At first he claimed he didn't know about it, when I've been sending him emails about it that he constantly ignored. He says, I say, you have any comment on this? And he says, nope, never heard of it. And I say, you never heard of it? I sent you emails about this. And he says, I tend not to comment on it because the evidence that we went to the moon is overwhelming. Now he admits that he's seen it, right? And but the question was about whether or not the government was willing to let John Glenn die. I didn't even mention the moon when I showed him the document. I was just showing him the evidence that NASA and the government was willing to let one of their astronauts die. But anyways, he tells me again to go schedule an interview with someone. Okay, go find the press agent, and so I went back to reception again. Right, this time it was only luck that the press agent was in the other room. He managed to schedule a 15-minute one-on-one interview with Plait, and so I was going to interview him after the speech he was going to give, and in the meantime, Adam Savage was also giving a speech. Adam Savage from the Mythbusters.
Yeah. And,
yeah.
Go ahead, but let me jump in here and give you props before we get into the Mythbusters part, because, I mean, first of all, I think almost you're underselling it a little bit here, because you flew all the way from Australia to Las Vegas to confront these guys about the propaganda, as you call it, alleging that the moon landing was correct. So, I mean, kudos to you for having the balls and the wherewithal and the drive, I guess you could say, to fly all the way across the planet in the name of this theory. Don't sell yourself short there. And you really took it to the Mythbusters guys there. So talk about that. Sorry to interrupt you, but I wanted to give you praise here for, a lot of people, it's easy to sit around and do things and not actually do the heavy lifting. But as I said, you're flying all the way across the planet to take this issue right to the folks who are alleging that the moon landing happened. So what happened when you confronted this savage character from Mythbusters?
Well, first of all, I would like to say that I didn't go there primarily for the encountering the propagandist. I also went there to pay my respects to Bill Casing. His ashes were scattered in Santa Barbara, and I went there to pay my respects there, with his daughter and stuff. Oh, okay. But anyways, when I went to Tamay, basically, Savage, he was giving his speech, and when it was done, there was this Q&A session, and basically he says, now if anyone has any things that I screwed up on the show that they want to talk about, just raise your hand. I'm saying he didn't ask for it. So basically I raised my hand and I pointed out that his moon hoax show was built on botched experiments, like when they were doing the wire jumping, the slow motion stuff. The conspiracy theory is that the slow motion, the low gravity footage on the moon, in the moonwalk videos and stuff, that was done by suspending the astronauts via wires, wandering around on this moon set, and then they slowed that footage of them on wires down to 67%, right? And originally we thought it was 50%, but it turned out to be 67%. Okay, everyone makes mistakes now and then, but I want that we correct them and stuff. Yeah. Anyways, that's the idea is that they were filmed on wires, and the footage of them on wires was slowed down, right? But they shot the two methods of fakery separately. First of all, they shot Adam Savage running around without a wire in slow motion, right? And then they shot him at full speed, suspended by a wire, jumping up and down. So obviously they're not going to get the results that match up with the Apollo footage. And the ironic thing is that if you actually take the footage of him on the wire and slow it down and then play it alongside the original Apollo 16 footage, you get a near perfect synchronization.
Exactly.
I raised that point to him, right? And he was like, I hadn't thought of that. Look, what we do isn't science. We're just an entertainment show. Just an entertainment show. We shouldn't be considered the definitive de facto place for the scientific analysis of the moon landings. That's a pretty big shocker, considering that how they constantly gloated how everything was busted.
Yeah. Well, skeptics across the board have a very pernicious way about them, a very smarmy sort of superiority complex that I find to be very off-putting.
Yeah. And when it was done, obviously, after that Q&A session, everybody was like, everyone at the conference was talking about it, texting people about it, and putting up blogs about it and stuff. Did he fly all the way from Australia just to say that? Or why did this guy come here? Like, they just weren't expecting me to come there. Now, I was expecting people to be hostile, but then there was actually people who actually came down and congratulated me, saying, "Hey, man, you flew all the way from Australia, just to come out and point out, say that to these guys and stuff." And so basically they gave me kudos for that, so that was a bit of a surprise. But Phil Plait, after the Q&A session, even though an interview was scheduled, right, he refused. He refused, saying that I wouldn't believe anything he'd say, so I'm not going to do an interview with you.
So he wasn't even willing to have a dialogue with you about all this.
Yeah. It's kind of ironic because he will go on a national radio show with Joe Rogan, debating the Apollo missions, yet he won't do any one-on-one interview with me over, claiming that I wouldn't believe anything he'd say. Which is kind of ironic because, there is one thing I do agree with him on. He says, if you were standing on the moon, you would indeed see the stars, even during the day. And yet Neil Armstrong comes back and he says, I couldn't see the stars from the lunar surface during the daytime and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does he not acknowledge that whole thing? Does he just not even say anything about the Neil Armstrong part?
He just gives you the silent treatment. Whenever you press fill play, it just gives you the silent treatment. That's the way it goes. Yeah, so as I was saying earlier, you see, like, when Ray committed suicide and stuff, there was a whole lot of new material that was popping up out of the woodwork, like the LRO photos, the Dutch moon rock, the fact that the Dutch moon rock turned out to be petrified wood, that one, the missing moonwalk videos turned out to be erased, wiped over, taped over and stuff. This was all this new stuff that I had planned on addressing and stuff. But of course, first I had to fly over to New Jersey, to attend Renee's funeral and stuff. He requested that his ashes be scattered. But during my absence, the incident has turned into Attack of the Trolls, which left me with more propagandist rubbish to clear up afterwards and stuff that just pushed my coverage of the current affairs even further back. But I'm proud to say that I've made it through the storm, and I've got a new series coming up. I've got a new website coming up. It's going to be quite a show, I can promise you that.
Well, good, because I want to see more from you. I think you're doing fantastic work, even though I'm still on the fence about the moon hoax theory. I'm of the opinion. I'll give you sort of my take on this, and, you can feel free to, talk to me about it, I guess you could say. Well, I'm not interested in sort of like rehashing the whole moon hoax debate, because everybody sort of heard both sides of the arguments, I think, or at least people in the paranormal community have. And they've made up their mind one way or the other, or they're on the fence about it. But I think that the moon hoax theory is sort of just like a smoke and mirrors trick to keep people from looking at the UFO phenomenon. That's my opinion. I think that it's sort of like, I think that something, to use the phrase apparently that was passed down and used in the community, something funny happened on the way to the moon, but it was UFOs. It wasn't the impossibility of getting there.
Yeah, I tend to encounter a lot of UFO people. I don't delve into the UFO subject specifically, Frank, but it's interesting to note is that one of the Apollo astronauts there, he's actually a big proponent of UFOs. Edgar Mitchell from Apollo 14.
Right.
He constantly comes out saying that that they're hiding something. The U.S. government is hiding something. The existence of UFOs, the Roswell thing, or whatever and stuff. Personally, perfectly frank, I think he's just trying to divert attention away from the real issue, which is the fact that that his Apollo 14 mission was a hoax, as were all the other Apollo moon missions.
So we almost have we have almost competing ideas, but at the same time, or conflicting ideas, but at the same time, we agree that something fishy happened. We can agree on that, right?
Yeah. Yes, for sure. Sure.
I just don't think, I guess to sort of put my skeptic hat on, I just don't know if you could manage to orchestrate that much of a cover-up and fake all those different moon landings. I mean, how many were there, like 7 or something like that?
Well, there was 6 moon landings, and there was three orbital flights. Like there was the Apollo 8, which was an orbital flight with just the CSM, that's basically the mothership. You got another one, there was Apollo 10, which had the edited telecasters I was telling you about, which was the lunar module and the command module. Basically, they were just flying it around the moon without landing it. They're just flying this thing out to see how they could handle it.
Exactly.
And then there was Armstrong's mission, right, and a few other missions. There was going to be Apollo 13 as well, which was supposed to be the 3rd moon landing and stuff, but then there was that alleged oxygen tank explosion, which what you might have seen that film with Tom Hanks. But just getting back to what you're saying about how could they have faked all of this stuff. One of the things that you constantly get in debate is like, how could so many people have been kept quiet about this? How could they have kept this under wraps? Well, the truth of the matter is that secrets involving thousands and thousands of people can and have been covered up for decades. Some people, you might not have heard about this, but there was you ever heard of the Soviet N1 program?
No, but I've heard the argument you're using in favor of UFOs. So I mean, we're of the same mindset. You know what I mean? I see your point of view that the atomic bomb was this massive, coordinated, secret project that nobody knew about until we dropped the bomb on Japan. So it's the same sort of idea, right?
Well, that's another example of secrets being kept under wraps. But what I'm talking about is the N1 program, which was basically the Soviet equivalent of the Apollo program. They were building their own Saturn-sized moon rocket and stuff, but they had two secret moon projects. The N1 program, which was basically their equivalent of the Apollo Saturn V, the equivalent of the Apollo CSM, the Apollo Lunar Module and stuff. It was just a two-man mission. There was a bit of a difference in there and stuff. But then they also had the Proton, the Zonda program, which was basically to put a stripped-down Soyuz atop a Proton rocket, launch that to the moon, fly it around there, and then come back again and stuff. But they were constantly reluctant to use that sort of stuff because, like in the beginning, they told Sir Bernard Lavelle, the British astronomer, that they had to postpone moon flights indefinitely because of the radiation encountered on the way there and stuff. And so, even though the N1 was a complete failure, but the Zond was somewhat proven and stuff. They sent a one capsule around the moon and back again and stuff. Now, a lot of people cite this mission, the Zonda 5, because it actually carried turtles around. They say, oh, well, if turtles can survive the radiation, then so can humans. But turtles, they're much more resistant to radiation than humans are. Like a human can take a 500 rem, which is the dose, basically how much radiation a person can take before they die, and whereas a turtle can take like 15,000 or 60,000 or something like that, so, it's apples and oranges trying to compare the two.
Exactly. Anyways, you couldn't jump off the Brooklyn Bridge, but I bet if he threw a turtle off, I bet he'd live.
Yeah. Anyways, the whole idea is that after the N1 was a failure, right? The Soviets, this involved thousands and thousands of scientists and engineers. They had four different rocket launches, these Saturn-sized rockets. So each one of them blew up. And after the failure of the N1, they completely covered up, kept it secret for 30 years. It was only revealed after the Soviet Union collapsed. And so, if they're equivalent to the Apollo program, its very existence can be kept under wraps this whole time. I fail to see how the Americans would have been unable to cover up a conspiracy behind their own moon program. In fact, some people on the internet actually call the N1 program the real moon landing hoax. People who you still believe Apollo might and stuff. They call that the real moon landing hoax because, like the Russians, they perpetrated a hoax by claiming they had never been in the race to begin with. They say, oh, we never had this moon program. We never had any plans to use anything like that. But they had covered this thing up, and that involved thousands of people. And so if the Soviets can do it, then so can the Americans. So that's the reason why there was so many people involved. How could they keep it? This is the reason why that claim is by propagandists is bunk. But even so, then you got to remember too is that not everyone at NASA would have been would have needed to be in on the conspiracy. Like the technicians at Houston, as I was saying earlier, they simply read what's on their computer screens, right, and wouldn't need to know or care where the videos or the data and stuff came from. Right. And who were they receiving it from? They're receiving it from the NASA Manned Spaceflight Network, which is basically this facility of NASA-owned or NASA-contracted facilities, supposedly receiving these signals from space, and supposedly from the moon. It was like there's some missions stayed in Earth orbit, others probably never even left the ground. Anyways, the point is, right, that all the Manned Spaceflight Network would need to do is relay all this information over the landlines, and then, the guys at Houston would just say, okay, this came from the moon. It's as simple as that, really. So they wouldn't need to know about the conspiracy. So,
okay,
you got to remember all those issues when people come back and say, oh, well, there were so many people involved in Apollo. It's not. It's just there's people who don't need to know about it, and there's facts that conspiracies involving a number of people can be covered up. So that's just the way things are, really.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I totally see your point of view. I'm still open-minded, I guess. I guess you could say. So the idea that I just feel like they would make a lot of mistakes, but I guess that's what you guys are doing in the moon hoax theory community, is sort of picking up on these mistakes that continually seem to surface in the story.
Yeah, exactly. There's those photographic anomalies like the lighting being off, like when Aldrin walks down into the lunar module shadow, he appears lit up, and the propagandists, they say, oh, it's light bouncing off the surface. Well, if you actually consider how bright that thing is, the lunar surface is actually as bright as an asphalt road. Has the same reflectivity and stuff, and I recreated the experiment, using an asphalt road and the sun. I put a model inside a box. The box was to black out the the additional light from the blue sky, because the blue sky acts like additional light. There's only one light on the sun, so I can't use the blue sky. Anyway, I did the experiment, and the astronaut came black as pitch. So obviously that reflected light thing doesn't work. And then you got the fact that recently to try to settle this, the Americans they sent their lunar reconnaissance orbiter to supposedly send back pictures of the landing site, to try to, obviously that's a NASA probe, so obviously they would say that, wouldn't they? But if you actually look at the lunar reconnaissance orbiter photographs, you find many more anomalies and stuff. Like before the lunar reconnaissance orbiter came about, they were citing pictures from the Selene and the Clementine spacecraft, which allegedly show this halo, this bright area that was supposedly disturbance caused by the Apollo 15 engine bloom. But when you compare those footage to the newer lunar reconnaissance orbiter photos, you find out that this mysterious halo is just the reflected area of a giant impact crater.
Oh, weird.
So it wasn't caused by the engine exhaust at all. So where's the engine disturbance? If they insisted that it would have been visible from space, well, where is it? There isn't any.
Because they didn't go to the moon.
Because they didn't go to the moon. No. And in fact, if you actually look at the photos, you can see pebbles directly underneath the engine bell. These things would have been blown away by the engine exhaust. Just like if you get a leaf blower and stuff, and you blow dust away, it goes away. There's nothing left. There's pebbles directly underneath the engine bell and stuff. So it just doesn't make any sense and stuff.
So do you think it's impossible to go to the moon, or you think that, because, eventually we're going to try again, either us or the Chinese or some other country is going to try and make a run for the moon. Do you think it's possible for them to do it? And, if it's another country, are they going to blow the whistle on the moon hoax?
Well, not with 1960s technology, and certainly not with today's technology. You see, as I said, one of the proposals that's been brought up is to use 2 meters of water shielding, to actually shield you against the radiation of solar flares and stuff like that. In fact, one of the shuttle astronauts, James Van Hoften, he and his committee, they actually released a report basically saying that the solar flares and the cosmic rays and so forth were so severe that humans aren't even going to be able to, quote, get back to the moon until we can find better ways of shielding astronauts. He said they'd have to be constantly shielded and stuff, and that even when they're on the moon, a simple moonwalk would have been impossible because of the radiation, because it would be too severe to actually do any extended EVA activities outside the lunar module. And in fact, he proposed hiding inside a convenient lunar cave to protect you from the radiation. And so, good luck finding one, I guess. But so that's the whole issue. So if we don't have the technology to shield astronauts and to get back to the moon, how did they do it back then? And as far as the other nations, few people don't seem to realize this, but the truth is it's like a one world space government now, because like every single space agency except for the Chinese, they're all working together on the construction of the International Space Station and various other joint projects with the Americans.
Right.
And in fact, all the time, the Americans are soon going to be using Russian Soyuz capsules just to get to the space station that they've together constructed. And the only competing space nation is the Chinese, which also happens to be America's free trade partner. They're considered America's banker. So I don't think they're going to be blowing the whistle on NASA anytime soon. But it's another funny thing too is that they constantly. If you look, every time there's been a proposal for a return to the moon or a mission to Mars or whatever and stuff, it always never seems to be fulfilled. For one convenient reason after another. Like back when Armstrong supposedly landed on the moon, they were talking about sending humans to Mars by 1982.
Yeah, that's the part. That's the point that I was making earlier. That I find the whole idea of space travel very fishy and suspicious because. Maybe this is because I was born after the moon landing, or the moon landing hoax, as you see it, that, part of me is very frustrated with NASA in general, because I feel like it doesn't make sense that they would go to the moon and then stop going to the moon like in the mid-'70s, and it's been over 30 years now, and they haven't even gone back to the moon. That doesn't make sense to me at all. So
exactly. So you can understand it was a propaganda stunt. They needed to fulfill Kennedy's promise of landing a man on the moon first. Okay, we do that with Apollo 11. Now what? We've completed the objective. There's no more reason to continue continue with the hoax anymore. But we've got all these other missions. You know, they had plans for manned missions to Mars, Venus, and bases on the moon and stuff like that and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so they needed a reason to you know, basically get out of this, and so they had the Apollo 13 thing, which resulted in the cancellation of the Apollo project. You know, all the elaborate plans for space travel were effectively flushed down the toilet after that. No more plans to go back to the moon, no more plans for Mars travel and stuff like that. But if you notice, after a while, whenever they need votes for something, a U.S. president tends to propose space travel, you know, to try to boost himself in the opinion polls.
Yeah.
Like, okay, Bush Senior, he proposed as man on Mars by, I think it was he proposed a return to the moon by 1999, I think it was. That didn't happen about. Then Bush Jr., he proposes men on the moon by 2020. You know, this was in the height of the war on terror, the Iraq War and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then Obama comes along and says, "Oh, we've cancelled it because it's too expensive." Well, you've just spent, because if I can use the numbers here, right? As of 2010, right? The Constellation program cost about $9 billion, right? And the proposal was about half the cost of the first one, which was $135 billion, and they were aiming to expend about $67 billion on it. So far, they've only spent $9 billion on it, and say, hang on, now it's too expensive. But now Obama, he's proposing, you know, because he was going to get his ass kicked in the opinion polls, because now there's a whole lot of Americans who are going to be losing their jobs and stuff, you know, because now we've cancelled the shuttle, and at the moment they don't have any launch vehicles and stuff. They're still designing the Orion capsule, but they don't have any rocket to launch it with now that the thing was cancelled and stuff. But then Obama suddenly, just months after he proposes cancelling the return to the moon, he proposes, okay, we're going to skip the moon and head off to the asteroids and Mars. We should have a mission around Mars by the mid-1930s. It's ridiculous how they keep constantly pushing the date so far ahead into the future. You know, if you had to do it with the 1960s technology, then what's stopping you? You know, it didn't take you that long to build this rocket that supposedly took you to the moon. You know, so what's taking you so long building this thing to get back there or to go onto Mars? You know, at this rate, they might as well say we'll be back on the moon by 2100.
Right.
You know, even if it didn't happen, we'd all be dead. We wouldn't know. Better it to be a mystery than to be wrong.
That's true. You're tapping into my frustration here with NASA. I'm very upset with them, and I'm very frustrated with the whole organization. Whether or not they hoax the moon landing, or whether or not they're able to get there, the whole thing seems illogical to me. That this concept or field of space travel is stalled out so much. I mean, I'm tired of looking at the pictures. I'm tired of looking at pictures of stars and everything else. It's time to go. It's time to move, baby. It's time to get on the ship and start flying. You know what I mean?
You've got to realize one thing. Even if it was real, even if the moon landing was real, you've got to admit that this is a huge step backwards first we were landing men on the moon supposedly. Now suddenly we go back to Earth orbit flights.
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about.
Some people have even commented on how the whole new proposal seems like a step back from the shuttle itself is a poor design. I acknowledge that, but most people think that a space plane was superior to capsules. You know, first they were using capsules, and now they went over to space planes. Now they've gone back to capsules again and stuff. And so that's another step backwards when you think of it. Of course, the shuttle that was a terrible design and stuff. You know, if they can design a better space plane, for sure. You know, but you know it's just a whole huge step. And now they're going to be reliant on the Russians just to get to their own space station. Who really won the space race now makes you wonder. You know, I would have thought that the leaders in the space nation would have been taking the Russians there, but no, now it's the other way around and stuff.
It's so true, my friend. You know, it's supposed to be the best and the brightest down there at NASA, but it doesn't seem like they know what the fuck they're doing. That's the frustrating part, you know. Anyway, so this moon hoax theory, though, it's sort of been pigeonholed in the world of the paranormal as sort of like the bastard son of the esoteric, if you will. You know, it seems to get beyond the vitriol on both sides. There seems to be a heavy ridicule factor against the moon hoax theory. And you know, before I get your take on that, I will say that I'm constantly amazed and surprised by the prominent people that I meet and talk to in this field of the paranormal and general people in the mainstream who do give credence to the moon hoax theory. So just because it's heavily ridiculed by the media doesn't mean there aren't a lot of people who believe in it, not just serious researchers like you, but everyday people out there who've given it some thought and are on board with the moon hoax theory. But my question for you is, as the grandson of moon hoax theory, how do you feel about the very difficult public perception that moon hoax theory research has?
Well, it's a tough job. That's all I can really say, is because, okay, I try to educate people. I try to get the message out. And what I get in return is bullshit from propagandists. Most of the time, sticks and stones most of the time. But then they start resorting to putting words in your mouth and libeling about you on the internet and stuff. It just. At times it tends to grab on you. At times you can ignore it and stuff. But the problem is ignoring the propaganda won't make it go away. This is where it becomes sort of a no-win situation, because if you ignore it, if you just ignore the propaganda, you then get accused of running from their version of the truth. But then again, if you actually address their propaganda and point out why it is propaganda, why they're wrong and I'm right and stuff, you unwittingly give them undeserved attention, and it distracts you from the current issues.
Right.
The current issues, and even after you knock them down, there's always going to be their fellow trolls and adoring fans to pat them on the back and give undeserved praise, even after they've been debunked 6 ways to Sunday. So in the end, it seems like almost like a no-win situation. That's the unfortunate factor. But I remain confident that these guys are not going to deter me from completing my objective, and that's proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that the moon missions were faked. And it's an ongoing battle to the finish, I guess, and I'm going to continue doing it until I either die or NASA publicly acknowledges that the moon missions were faked. And as a matter of fact, I'm actually started, because one of the things that these guys often like to allege, the propagandists, they like to allege, he wouldn't believe that the moon missions were real if he was flown to the moon himself and shown the artifacts supposedly sitting on the surface. Well, I began a fundraise, flyjarretttothemoon@gmail.com, which is basically this PayPal account for people to send in donations. You see, the private organization Space Adventures, you might have heard about them. They said they sent tourists aboard the International Space Station and now offering tourists a flight around the moon aboard the Soyuz for $100 million per seat. You'd think that if they can send them around the moon, they would have, at least field tested it themselves before they offer it to tourists. But no, we're in it for tourists now. Okay. Well, what I've done is I've started up this fundraise, to try to raise $200 million. Half for my ticket, half for one of the propagandist tickets. Because I'm trying to find out how many propagandists are willing to make good on that claim that I'd be unconvinced that the moon missions were real if I was flown there myself and shown the artifacts. This is not also to see if the radiation, firsthand, whether or not the radiation is survivable, which I know it isn't. And so I know that if I do hit the 200 million and go on this thing, I won't be coming back. But it would be beneficial to both sides of the fence, because we'll have this first-hand and proof whether or not the radiation is survivable. If I come back dead or dying and stuff, then you'll know that it was a hazard for astronauts. And by any off chance, if I somehow do manage to survive the radiation, there'll be an opportunity to inspect the landing site, firsthand, see if anything is there. I've stated that I would accept a view through a ground-based telescope as proof, but even though we have telescopes like that, like the very large telescope in Chile, it has an angular resolution capable of seeing the artifacts, yet I haven't been able to find it yet. And so I would also accept, first-hand and flight around the moon if I'm somehow able to survive the radiation line. And so what I've got this fundraiser going to see if any of the propagandists are willing to make good on that claim that I'd be unconvinced and stuff. Unconvinced if I was shown the artifacts myself. Phil Plady in particular, he constantly alleges that, if you showed them the artifacts, if you flew them to the moon and said, they'd probably say that you drugged them or something. Okay, well, prove it then. Okay, here's the fundraise. You submit the money. Prove it. Let's see if I can survive, and let's see if what you say about me is true. But so far as I can tell, the vast majority of donors has been people who know that I'm gonna be dying from this. People who know that I'm gonna come back dead.
What do you
if the capsule ever does come back?
What do you mean? They're donating so you'll die?
All the people who have donated are people who know that I'm going to die, but they realize that what my noble cause is. It's a fight for the truth.
All right.
Yes.
I thought you meant like all of Phil Plate's fans are donating so you'll die when you go up there and you don't have to fight with you anymore. I was kind of making a joke.
That would be Yeah, well, that would be beneficial for them, I guess. But the people who have contributed to this fundraise are people who are my fellow conspiracy theorists. People who, some of them don't want to donate because they know I'm going to die, but others do because they realize this is my duty. You know, they realize this is I've made it my mission to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that the moon missions are fake. You know, get to the truth. Okay. If I survive, okay, I'll acknowledge, I guess, that maybe I was wrong, I guess. But if I die, if I come back dead and dying and stuff, dead or dying, I should say, you know, then we know that, okay, I was right. You know, I am not afraid to die for the sake of the truth, and if I have to put my life on the line to get to the truth, then so be it.
I like that passion.
You're listening to Banal of America Audio.
Are there any myths that you'd like to test but can't?
Well, we did a whole episode on busting the conspiracy theory that the moon landing was faked. Mm-hmm. And there are some people who are still unconvinced. So we would love to, if time, money were no object, build a spaceship, go to the moon, and come back with a piece of Apollo hardware.
Oh, that would be cool.
All in one take.
That would be cool. That would be cool. Well, can't you get a telescope strong enough to see the Apollo stuff on the moon?
We researched it, and no, not even the Hubble can resolve the images of the moon to tight enough resolution to see actual, like, footprints or pieces of Apollo hardware.
Would you be open to the idea that it didn't happen? Or do you want to prove it? See?
No.
What would happen? See?
In this, I have to admit to some bias that we've already been there. I believe absolutely unequivocally that, of course, we went there.
Well, then you're unqualified to have the tests. How do I know you're not going to bring a piece of equipment up there? I can't trust you now. You're like evolutionary scientists. They'll do anything to prove that it's real.
You're listening to Banal of America Audio.
What would prove to you beyond this? Because I'll be honest, I'm skeptical you're going to be able to raise $100 million. And if you did, why the hell wouldn't you just leave, dude, and just go get a nice place like in the Bahamas or something and forget about all this moon crap? Because then you have $100 million.
No, that's not my style. In fact, I've made a promise that every time someone sends in a donation, I acknowledge, you know, to prove that I'm not using it for personal luxuries or anything like that. Every time someone sends in a donation, no matter how small or how big or whatever, you know, I acknowledge it in my video and, you know, basically keep viewers informed just to prove that the money stays where it is.
Okay,
you know, get the $200 million.
I was just making a joke.
So, okay, well, as Desmond Llewellyn would say, I never joke about my work.
There you go. All right, I like that attitude. But beyond just because, you know, it is an awful lot of money. What would prove? What could you do here on Earth to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that we didn't go to the moon? You run up against the old argument of trying to prove a negative. So how do you do that? Is it even possible?
Well, there is one way to settle the argument completely once and for all, and that is, okay, we have these telescopes in Chile. As I said, they've got the Very Large Telescope, and it's basically these four large optical telescopes daisy-chained together. Okay, and so basically you can look at the moon and you can see objects on the resolution of 1 milliarc second. Okay, now you need a resolution of about 2 milliarc seconds to see artifacts on the moon that small. You know, so this thing has a perfect capable resolution to resolve the man-made equipment on the surface. So if you went to this facility and pointed it at the Apollo landing site, you'd be able to see whether or not there's anything up there. You know, and Bill Casey, he had constantly said that he would accept that as proof that whether or not the moon missions were real. He says if there's a lunar lander there, I'll recant on that, and I'll retract my claims, apologize to the astronauts, you know, about topology and stuff. But if there's nothing up there, then as he said, I'll rest my case. You know, and as the grandson, I feel it is my duty to hold on behalf of him to hold him to that, So he's passed away now. But if we can get the telescope, look at the moon, and see if there's anything up there, then on his behalf and on behalf of myself and all the other moon hoax conspiracy theorists, okay, I'll make a public apology to the Apollo astronauts. Hey guys, sorry, but I was wrong, and congratulations on your trip. But if it turns out that we look through this thing and there's nothing up there, okay, then I say, I told you there's nothing up there, but did you listen to me? Oh, no, you know, didn't you? It's fake. And there's your proof. It's quite interesting too is that I think the guy's name was David West, one of the guys who was working on this thing. He said that they would try to image the landing sites, and so far as I can tell, there has been no word on whether or not they've been able to find this thing. As far as I can tell, they haven't released any pictures showing the lunar module. Even though they've got this resolution, they haven't seemed to have found the lunar module yet.
Well, it's interesting that you made that statement about you'd accept it if you saw the image, because and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I'm about 95% sure that I sort of put that argument forward to Bart Sabrell when we had him on the show regarding, well, if you could get an image of the landing site and all the artifacts from a telescope, wouldn't that prove it? And he said, if they went so far as to fake the moon landing, wouldn't they just fake the images then and send them out, and say, hey, we just got it. We just imaged it off the moon here from this thing in Chile, and here it is, and it's just something they created on a computer. I mean, aren't you setting yourself up there to be hoodwinked, if you will, provided you're correct about the moon hoax?
I saw your interview with Bart Sabrell a few years back. I haven't seen it in a long while, but I don't recall him saying anything. I'll take your word for it though. But
yeah. Well, I mean, beyond the, I'm pretty sure about that. But let's just go beyond that and just say, let's just take the argument that I presented there and just use it from there. Wouldn't you be setting yourself up to be hoodwinked? By the original moon hoaxers, if you will. Wouldn't they just hoax the proof, if you will?
It all comes down to personal opinion as to what you feel is the absolute proof, I guess. But the benefit of an optical telescope is that you can look at it in real time. You're looking at yourself. It's not some image from a NASA-owned space probe that is encrypted and sent back to Earth to NASA facilities and stuff. This is something that you're standing there. You've got the eyepiece. Well, nowadays we use monitors and stuff, but you're looking directly at this in real time. With this telescope, you can position it every way you want, whichever way you want to go to, and stuff. And so you're looking at it there. That would be direct, first-hand and proof to anyone, I guess. So that's my stance along those lines, and that's why I would accept a view through an optical telescope. I'm not familiar with I don't recall what Sabrell. I haven't seen the radio show that he was on in a while back, but I don't recall what he said along those lines. But like I said, it all comes down to personal opinion, I guess. And as far as whatever's good enough for the grandfather, I'm sure it should be good enough for everyone else within the moon hoax movement.
That's true, but knowing the paranormal community and the conspiracy community as I do, I know that nothing is really good enough in a way, because it's just always elusive. It's like, again, trying to prove that negative is just so difficult.
Well, you tend to get people like that on the propaganda side of things, because one of the big propagandists, Jay Windley, he was quoted publicly. He publicly said that even if Neil Armstrong admitted that it was a hoax, he still wouldn't believe it. And in fact, they even had a little opinion. Yeah, they had an opinion poll as well. Basically, asking people, okay, what would convince you that the moon missions are faked? And the vast majority of them said that nothing would convince them. So you've got these propagandists who have already made up their mind that no matter what happens, no matter what you say, nothing is going to sway them. They're going to be propagating this myth all their life. Okay, even if I go up there and die, they'll probably just say, oh, his was an exception. They had a major flare there, whereas the others didn't. Well, the Apollo missions, they also had major flares and stuff, but they just come with one bullshit excuse after another, and so no matter what you got your different. There's different categories of believers. You've got people who are open to both sides of the thing, and who can be swayed, can be turned and stuff. But then you've got your diehard propagandists who were not. You would not believe that the missions were faked, even if the astronauts made a deathbed confession or publicly stated that. And one of the games that they love playing is alleging that everyone who's a scientist believes that the Apollo missions are real. You never find a credentialed expert who believes that the Apollo missions are faked. Well, the fact is, some of the conspiracy theorists do in fact have credentials. Like one of them was Bill Wood, who has a BSc, and one of them was Dr. David Groves, obviously has a PhD and stuff. And the astronaut Brian O'Leary, even though he says I think they did land, he says I'm not 100% sure. And so then you've got there's this other guy, Dr. Q Zeng. Even though he never really commented on the moon missions, he has expressed doubt of the recent Chinese spacewalk. He said that they were filmed in a swimming pool. So then you got people who do have credentials who actually doubt the moon missions or certain other space missions and stuff. And so but when you present them with this, they either say, their credentials are phony, or if they can't. Or if it's beyond a shadow of a doubt that the credentials are legit, they just say, he's wrong, I don't care. It just seems almost like a popularity contest now. It's no longer about evidence. Now it all seems to be about popularity.
Yeah.
So that's what they've basically turned this into now.
Now, another aspect of this whole thing that I wanted to talk to you about is sort of these two tangential conspiracies that are sort of lumped in with the moon hoax theory, and that is the Apollo 1 disaster, I guess you could say, or tragedy, and the Challenger disaster / tragedy. And a lot of people in the moon hoax community think that both of these were orchestrated events. So I know that Bill Casing did, and since you're the grandson of the moon hoax theory, I figure you know at least about these ideas, and maybe you can weigh in on where you stand as far as believing in these two sort of peripheral conspiracies.
Yeah, I actually produced a video on this. It's called Moonfaker Apollo 1. It can be viewed on YouTube. It can also be it's also available on this data DVD that's released by moonmovie.com. It's featured on there along with the Apollo 1 investigation report. Mm-hmm. Anyways, the astronaut Gus Grissom, he was known to be very outspoken about the Apollo project. He constantly said that he didn't feel it would work, that someone would die from on their mission. They felt that, if I recall correctly, he said there was only like a 1 in 3 chance of this actually being successful. And he to let the world know what he thought of the Apollo program, he took a lemon off his tree and hung it on the Apollo command module. And basically, I believe the Americans refer to non-road-weary cars as lemons. So basically, that was what he thought of his spaceship. Basically, the idea of Apollo 1 was supposed to be an Earth orbit flight, and if it was successful, he would be slated to be the first man to walk on the moon. Because he was basically their poster boy for astronauts. And so he was their number one choice. And so, but basically, he was very outspoken with this. He didn't feel it was going to work, and NASA evidently it became clear that he would not go along when it was his time to fake the first moonwalk, and so they needed to silence him, and they also needed to send a message out to all the astronauts who would follow in his footsteps, and so. On January 27th, during a plugs-out test, he was loaded into this capsule along with his crew, the Apollo 1 capsule. Now, if you understand what we're sitting in right now, what the air you're breathing is nitrogen and oxygen at 14.7 psi. That's pounds per square inch. Now, in space, the Apollo capsule would have an interior pressure of about 5 psi pure oxygen. Okay, and if you wanted to simulate this on the ground, you would need to pump the air pressure up to about 20 psi, all this in pure oxygen. But normally, they do the oxygen tests and the plugs out test separately. Today they decided to do it. They decided to do it at the same time. They put the astronauts in there and pump up the pressure. But if that's not enough, right, there's so many other issues that NASA, they just seem to go out of their way to make their capsule as unsafe as possible. There was like 5 miles of wiring in their thing, all really bad. In fact, John Young, one of the Apollo astronauts, he has made statements on TV and stuff like that, saying that their wires are really bad. He says, I constantly told Grissom to speak out about them, and he says, if I do, they'll fire me. Yeah, well, evidently they fired him quite literally, and if he was so concerned about the wires, then why didn't he speak out? And then there's also a thing called Velcro, which is what they you use to stick things together and stuff.
Yeah.
And normally Velcro isn't a fire hazard, but if you put it in pure oxygen, it burns like a bitch.
Really?
So basically, in pure oxygen, even stainless steel will burn. Okay, including asbestos. Right, NASA had 4 tests, at various Air Force bases, at Brooks Air Force Base and Johnsville Navy Air Station and various other places, right? In which men were burned critically in these pure oxygen chamber tests. And that one of them, right, the guy was simply changing a light bulb, right? And what happened is that the spark happened and it set his arm on fire, set his clothes on fire. Right, some guy comes over with an asbestos fire blanket. Normally they use asbestos as fireproofing and stuff. They wraps his arm in it, and the asbestos blanket caught up on fire.
Oh boy!
This was in 1962, right? And NASA subsequently filed reports on this. That say these tests illustrate in concrete fashion the potential dangers of pure oxygen atmospheres, right? And so, yet in NASA, they classified this test as not hazardous, and so they had all this flammable stuff inside there, such as Velcro, and in fact Grissom, he was constantly complaining about that there was too much Velcro, too much flammable shit in the capsule. Right? He complained that he mentioned that to Joe Shea during the acceptance test, which was in October or August or something the year before that. He was saying that there was too much Velcro and stuff like that. And the rule was that nothing that can react to a spark should be within 4 or 10 inches within any ignition source, like wires or whatever, but the whole interior was just plastered with it. They covered the entire capsule interior with Velcro. Joe Shea, he says that he ordered. Joe Shea was the systems manager, and basically he says, I got annoyed, and I said, look, we go clean up the capsule, tells that to North American Aviation, and so, yet they never removed it, right? And interestingly enough, Joe Shea, he was actually giving an interview just before he died, in which he says that Grissom was constantly complaining about this Velcro that's in there, and then he says Grissom put it in there himself. The astronauts, all 3 astronauts, they just plastered they put Velcro wherever they wanted, as he said. Well, if he was so concerned about Velcro being a fire hazard, why would he put Velcro in the capsule in the first place?
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I know. It's like being concerned about petrol setting your car on fire and then dousing it with petrol. It doesn't make any sense. It's basically blame the dead guy so you can save yourself. And so. And not only that, not only did NASA know about the hazard, not only did they make it so dangerous, North American Aviation, their contractors, see, there's 2 groups of people, right? You've got NASA who's actually trying to launch this thing, and you've got North American Aviation who are basically building the capsule. So you've got North American Aviation guys and NASA guys on the pad, and since the 1960s, since the Mercury days, they had known that pure oxygen was going to be hazardous. It was going to be a hazard. In fact, one of the guys, I believe his name was Frank Hendel, he submitted a document, an article in the Journal of Aviation and Spaceflight, and he said that pure oxygen presents a fire hazard, which is especially great on the launching pad when the cabin is purged with oxygen at sea level pressure, right? And yet the guys from North American Aviation, Harrison Storms, Charlie Phelps and Toby Friedman and stuff, they all claimed that they thought NASA was going to be doing a test at only 5 psi. And they say, oh, had we known, we would have called them up and say, hey, hold everything, that's a hazard. We didn't know. We didn't know that they were going to be doing it. But yet one of their guys back in the 1960s explicitly stated that since the Mercury days, the pure oxygen is going to be hazardous, that it's a fire hazard. You know, he just said it right there, that they knew that they do this stuff at basically at sea level pressure. In Apollo 1's case, 20 psi, which is above sea level pressure. Okay, and now they say we thought they were going to be doing it at only 5 psi, which that's an outright lie to it there. You know, and so it doesn't make any sense. Oh yeah, and about I just remembered Joe Shea. He was the Apollo spacecraft program office manager. That's what his position was and stuff. Okay, and basically he says that he said that Grissom was complaining about the Velcro, and then he says that Grissom put it in there himself. So you got a whole lot of dishonesty from both the contractor and the guys who are trying to put this thing into space, right? Oh, and here's another thing too: the door on the capsule. Right? Yeah. This was a new 3-layer hatch, right, which opened inward and took about 90 seconds to open under good conditions, right? In the Mercury days, you had a little hatch, pull the lever, pops off. In the Gemini program, you had ejectance seats. So basically, if you got an oxygen fire in there, no worries, you just pull the hatch and you blow the hatch and all the oxygen runs out, and so that you know, all the sea level nitrogen stuff runs in and stuff, and so there you go, the fire is extinguished, you know. But you know, because it's running on pure oxygen, so you pull the hatch, all the pure oxygen runs out, and there you go, no more fire. But Apollo, they had a 3-layer hatch that opens inward, which under all that pressure would be impossible to get open inward, right? And here's the thing: the hatch could only be opened from the outside. They could only open from the outside, and in an emergency it was completely unusable, and a new hatch had just been designed which could be opened within 20 seconds. All right, I believe Gordon Cooper, one of Grissom's buddies from the Mercury days, he said that probably would have saved Grissom. And here's the thing: the Apollo 1 plugs out test was to be the last time the old hatch was ever to be used before they refitted it. But here's the thing: it was also the first time they were going to use this hatch.
Weird.
Yeah, I know. So if they were going to replace the hatch with an easier one, why wouldn't they just postpone the test until they got the new one put on? You know, so they went out of their way to make the capsule as unsafe as possible. You know, and then what else was there? Okay, here's another thing too. Okay, there's conflict as to when the fire actually initially began. You see, officially, only 15 seconds went by from the first mention of fire to the moment that the capsule ruptured. You see, as the capsule, as the oxygen burns and stuff, all this smoke and pollutants and stuff fills the air and increases the pressure to the point that the capsule bursts. Yeah. You know, and so basically it says that only 15 seconds went by, but other witnesses reported that the first mention of fire was minutes away. Like Thomas Ronald Barron, one of the safety inspectors who was actually complaining as well, he was actually fired prior to the thing for releasing his findings to the press and stuff. And so after the fire, he testified saying that one of the guys, a fellow by the name of Al Holmberg, he stated that the first mention of fire was about 10 or 12 minutes before the capsule actually ruptured, and that they had tried to get out for 5 minutes, right? And now, Holmberg later denied what he told Barron, but another fellow, an RCA technician by the name of Gary Probst, he told a similar story. He said that it was at least 3 minutes or so from when the astronauts first cried out, and then when the capsule basically filled with flames, because he was watching the actual thing on the monitors. He was actually watching the thing, and there was a group of other people watching it with him, and he was like screaming, "Blow the hatch! Why don't they blow the hatch?" He didn't know that they didn't have an explosive hatch, you know, like they had on the Mercury days and stuff. Right. Basically, he was watching this thing, and they were having a discussion as to how long their suits would protect them from the fire, and like how, you know, could they get out or not? How long will it take to get the hatch open and stuff? And so, because like during this time, during the time of this conversation, right, the air inside it was still clear, And shortly then after that, about 2 or 3 minutes after that, the flames began to lick in front of a window. And here's the thing too: Paul P. Haney, one of the guys at NASA, he actually, after the fire, he acknowledged that they had videotape of the disaster, because they had a camera there watching the capsule burn, right? So they had videotape of the disaster, right? Now we're told there's no videotape. There's no videotape. Mark Gray, who actually sells, stock footage, the spacecraft films guy who used DMCA abuse, right? He has publicly said that there is no footage of the fire. No footage exists. Even though NASA, on the night of the fire, they actually confirmed that they had videotape of this stuff, right? Now we're told that no footage of the fire was recorded.
Weird.
Right? Well, we know that footage. I know. We know that footage of the fire exists, and NASA and evidently spacecraft films are suppressing it. Okay, quite frankly, I wouldn't want to see the footage. I don't want to see the astronauts die like so horribly. But the footage needs to be released because we need proof. We need proof that just to how long these astronauts last. We need to settle this thing once and for all, because we got witnesses saying that they saw them trying to get out there for like 10 or 5 minutes or so, right? And now NASA is told that the first mention of fire to the moment the capsule ruptured was only 15 seconds. I don't want to see the astronauts dying as much as the next guy, but that footage needs to be released to set the record straight.
Yeah, so we can study it and figure out what actually happened.
Exactly. We need to set this aside. Was it 15 minutes? Was it 10 minutes? Was it 5 minutes? Was it 15 seconds? Which was it? We need to just set the record straight once and for all.
But they're saying that it doesn't even exist. So it's how you even.
They're saying it doesn't even exist.
Yeah. So you're almost.
They're saying it doesn't exist.
There's no further you can really take that then, right? I mean, if they say it doesn't exist, and what are they going to one day just say, "Oh, we found it"? I mean, there's no. You're at like a dead end on that, I guess, right?
No, it's we're trying to get NASA to acknowledge the truth is like talking to a brick wall.
Exactly.
And
well, what about
that's the Apollo 1 for you. Yeah, basically Grissom was complaining about Apollo, said it wasn't going to work, and NASA, they needed to silence him. He opened his mouth, he had to go. Recently, Gus Grissom's son, Scott, he was actually granted access to the wreckage. The capsule is stored in Langley Research Center, I think it is. And he was actually granted access to the remains of the capsule, and he found evidence that a metal plate had actually been shoved behind the dashboard to deliberately trigger a spark when an astronaut pressed this button.
Wow. That's quite an allegation.
Yeah.
Well, what about the Challenger theory here? Now, what about this conspiracy theory, that there was also, an orchestrated disaster to maintain silence, if you will, and I'll let you flesh that out. But talk about that conspiracy theory, because I'd never heard that aspect of it all.
Okay, well, if you actually speak to any of the Apollo astronauts, or any astronaut for that matter, and ask them about the stars, okay, they would actually not comment in any way about stars. They would say, "Oh, we only see them on the nighttime side, or they'd be dim and fuzzy, or whatever and stuff." Okay, it's because in the beginning, Neil Armstrong, he comes back and he says, "I couldn't see stars from the daylight side of the moon," and yet we got other astronauts, we've got cosmonauts and going up onto the daylight side of the Earth and saying that we saw stars. The Earth is much brighter than the moon is on the daylight side, so you'd think you'd be able to see stars from the moon's surface. And it seems like NASA has basically made this party line to their astronauts: do not ever talk about the stars.
Yeah.
And Krista McAuliffe, the teacher who was chosen for the Teacher in Space project. Now, Krista McAuliffe, she was a very outspoken woman. She refused to be scripted by her government handlers. She refused to be censored. She refused to basically tell bullshit to the class, because the education in America, it's pretty poor to say the least. But she wanted to tell it like it is. She wanted to make sure that everything was told accurately. So it's unlikely she would have said you can't see stars whilst on the daylight side of the Earth. Okay, here's the thing about the Challenger, right? The Challenger was launched in cold weather. Okay, see, I'm going to be measuring in metric, so the temperature was about on the launch conditions was -1 degree Celsius. -1 degree Celsius, which is about, let me do the calculation.
Well, it's certainly below freezing.
1 degree.
And it's below
1 degree Celsius in, yeah, so basically I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit. I use metric. But anyways, the launch conditions was -1 degree Celsius. Now, prior to just the year before that, right, they had another mission in January of the year before, in January 1985, which was Discovery's STS-51C mission. Okay, they all have their own mission numbers, like a Challenger was STS-51L, this one was STS-51C, and there was Discovery launched in temperatures of only 10 degrees Celsius, which is also freezing, and basically, you see what we have, the shuttle, if you can understand, right, you see the launch boosters, right, you see the external tank, you see the two right boosters on the other side. Those are basically for lifting the weight of the fuel tank, because it's too heavy for the shuttle to carry, on the launch pad and stuff. So basically, these boosters are what we use to carry the weight of that, and they're basically composed of all these different segments of solid fuel, which are bonded together with these thick rubber O-rings. Okay, that's the ones together with these seals and stuff, and so basically these O-rings stop hot gases from leaking out, and if the gases leak out, that can cause damage, like it can burn the external tank and basically blow it up. And so there was a fellow by the name of Roger Beaujolais who works for Morton Fire Cold, which was the company that actually builds these boosters. I actually managed to interview Beaujolais a few months ago and stuff. Beaujolais, he actually took photos of the O-rings from that mission, from the STS-51C, and he noticed in this cold weather, the O-rings, the primary, there's actually two O-rings. There's a primary O-ring and a secondary O-ring. The primary O-ring had failed because of the cold weather. It had been frozen in the cold, and the secondary O-ring was less than a millimeter away from getting burned through completely. Okay, so he submitted a memo to his superiors, basically saying that we need to stop launching in cold weather, otherwise we stand in jeopardy of losing a flight, along with the crew and all the launch pad facilities.
Yeah.
Because he was afraid that this thing would blow up on the launch pad in that cold weather and stuff. Because had the S-51C O-ring failed, okay, we would have had a shuttle blowing up as early as 1985. Okay, but in 1986, just a year later, right, they were planning to launch this thing with the Teacher in Space project, and the launch coincided with even colder weather. It was the Discovery launch was 10 degrees Celsius. This one was -1 degree Celsius, and the night before the launch, right, Beaujolais and Thompson and a few other Morton Fire Coal engineers, they got together with their management, and they basically they telephoned Marshall Space Flight Center, the guys at NASA, who basically, okay, they need to run some checks before the launch, and they need to know, okay, is everything functional before we launch this thing?
Right.
And so basically, they called up and they said, we advise not launching in cold weather. This is away from goodness, as they say, because they didn't know how low a pressure the O-rings could take. But obviously, the 10 degrees Celsius, that was a clear indication that was near disastrous. So, we're going to be even in even colder weather now. So that's like sure enough to get this shuttle blown up.
Yeah.
So we advised not launching, and the managers from Morton Fire Coal said. First of all, we have George Hardy, one of the managers from Marshall. He said he was appalled by the decision, but he would only launch if the Fire Coal manager said it was safe to launch. And at this stage, Fire Coal was saying it was unsafe to launch, but various other managers at Marshall were insisting that we launch. Like Lawrence Malloy, he actually said that the Fire Coal's data was inconclusive, and that he actually challenged them to come up with proof. And to come up with further proof before they say what is safe and what isn't safe. And so basically, all these guys at Marshall were pressuring the managers at Fire Coal to basically change their minds and launch. And finally, the managers at Fire Coal, they say, look, give us a moment, okay, we need to discuss this, and they go on hold. They wanted to go on hold for a minute, which ended up being about half an hour or so, I think. And so the managers, Gerald Mason, Joseph Kilminster and Robert Lund. Okay, Robert Lund received the actual memo from Beaujolais, mind, Okay, the Beaujolais, the guy who said that we do not launch in cold weather. Here's the memo. It is the proof that it's dangerous, you know?
Yeah.
So these guys are equally aware, but, you know, pressured by the higher-ups at NASA, you know, they said, look, we need to
Make this happen.
to take a vote on this. We need to talk about this. We need to take a vote on it. And eventually, the guy said, you need to take off your engineering cap and put on your management cap. You know, and so when it looked like the managers were changing their mind, Beaujolais and Thompson actually got up and you know, tried to get them to realize that this is a bad idea. You know, don't change your minds. Look, we have to make sure this thing is postponed. You know, we have to make sure it's in safe weather. You know, but the managers looked like they were changing their minds, and Thompson, they got up, you know, showing charts and stuff, showing the calculations and stuff. And Beaujolais, he got up there screaming, showing them his photos from the damaged O-rings from the other mission. You know, basically screaming at them, look at this, you know, damn it, look at this. This O-ring is nearly burned away completely. Okay, what do you think's going to happen tomorrow if we launch in even colder weather? Yeah. But this time they were told to basically just sit down and shut up. You know, and all three managers agreed to vote. To agree to vote to go to launch, and so they went off hold again and said to Marshall, it's a go to launch, and so basically this was purely a management decision. All the engineers were basically told to sit down and shut up at this stage, and so they obviously Marshall Space Flight Center immediately accepted their new decision to launch, you know, which was basically they pressured them into deciding, and so basically they reported that to NASA's top management and stuff. And here's the thing too, right? Another guy by the name of Al McDonald, who was one of the fire coal guys. Okay, he was told that even though we don't agree on this decision and stuff, we will most certainly inform the top NASA management of your concerns. They didn't.
Right.
They didn't. Stanley Ramatas, right? He did not form Jesse Moore or Arnold Aldrich, who were the two top management guys that the dangers and stuff. These guys claim they weren't even aware of any hazard and stuff. And so the next day the O-rings froze up, and they launched the shuttle, and what happened? It blew up. It blew up, silenced all 7 astronauts on board. Now, in the months that followed, right, Marshall and Fire Coal, they ultimately tried to keep lids on everything. And the guys who were actually speaking up, continuing to speak up, Beaujolais and Thompson and all that stuff, they were effectively demoted as punishment for their honesty.
It's very shady. It's very shady.
Yeah. Now, I would like to point out that Beaujolais, he told me that he didn't think it was murdered, but he does feel that it wasn't an accident. He does feel, because like an accident is when you do something, you do a bad thing without prior knowledge of the consequences. He was screaming at these bastards, telling them that you launched in this weather, you're going to get the astronauts killed, and you got 7 astronauts killed. You know, he took a really turn for the worse, because he became extremely depressed. You know, he felt he had failed the astronauts. You know, he tried to protect them. He tried to save them. In fact, the astronauts themselves, they were not even informed. You know, normally in the old days, you know, the astronauts would be informed of the shape of their spacecraft before they actually came aboard. Here, they weren't even at the teleconference in which the arguments arisen. So they probably had no idea of the danger that they were in, and they were effectively, it's like giving some guy the keys to a car that doesn't have any brakes.
Exactly, yeah.
That's what it's like.
Yeah.
That's what it's like.
And so essentially you're saying that he thinks it was negligence, but you're saying that more likely, or we have to give credence to the idea that they were trying to silence, Krista McCullough from potentially revealing the truth about what you can see from space.
Yeah, pretty much. The whole fact of the matter is that whichever way you look at it, whether it was negligence or whether it was murder, it clearly wasn't an accident. Because as Beaujolais said, an accident is when you do something that without prior knowledge of the consequences. Like if you accidentally exit out the door and accidentally walk into someone and stuff, that would be considered an accident. Or if you borrow someone's stereo and you end up breaking it by mistake, that would be an accident. where someone tells you that the shuttle is going to blow up if you launch in cold weather, and yet you still launch in cold weather, that's no accident.
Right. I guess at the end of the day, Jera, the question really, though, is I commend you, for your passion and willing to go the distance here on proving one way or the other this moon hoax theory. But I wonder really, what's the point of it all? You know what I mean? Why? What difference does it make? We're not even going back to the moon anymore. And, it's like saying that Abraham Lincoln plagiarized the Gettysburg Address. It's like what's the point, I guess? What's the motivating factor behind all this? Why do you think it's so important to prove that we didn't go to the moon?
Well, it's important to get the truth out, and whichever way you look at it, the mankind has nowadays become sort of dependent on space. We've got many satellites up in space now for everyday use. People can't take it for granted. And people have constantly talked about maybe visiting other planets in the future, like setting up civilizations and stuff, but these are just going to be dreams. We're not going to be able to get anywhere, okay, with NASA constantly perpetuating this lie that the Apollo astronauts went to the moon, but, we're not going back because it's too expensive. The real reason why we can't go back to the moon is because of the radiation, and until we can sort out this, okay, we need to get NASA to acknowledge, okay, you faked it, now let's try to work out how we can actually go to the moon for real, how we can actually reach the stars someday. We're not, as long as people keep living in this fantasy world that 7 astronauts suddenly went there in this flimsily shielded spacecraft, and with all this radiation, and yet now we come back and suddenly we're not doing it anymore. Mankind needs to move forward, and we're not going to be moving forward so long as NASA keeps us living in this fantasy world.
Right. Okay. So that's sort of like the motivating factor behind all this for you is to sort of set the record straight and get us back on track, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. I as a kid, I dreamed of being the first man. You know who my hero was when I was a child? When I was a child, my hero was Andy Thomas, one of the Australian astronauts.
Okay. Yeah.
The Australian astronaut Andy Thomas, he flew the shuttle a few times. He flew the Mir space station and stuff. And I looked up to him. I wanted to follow in his. He never went to the moon, obviously, but I wanted to be an astronaut too. I dreamed of going to Mars someday. And then I realized that the truth is it's just bullshit. What they're saying about how we went to the moon in the 1960s with very little technology and stuff.
Yeah.
Now they're constantly saying, we can't go back to the moon because it's too expensive. It's got nothing to do with budget. It's all about physically being able to survive the journey.
Right.
As long as they keep telling us this garbage, mankind is never going to move forward, and we're never going to reach the stars. It's important that we stop living in this science fiction fantasy world. Okay, get the facts straight. Okay, and then start working out how to actually get there for real.
Yeah.
That's what really motivates me. It's important to get the truth out so we can move mankind forward.
Let's say you're correct in this moon hoax theory, and it eventually comes out. How do you see that unfolding? Because it would have to be, at least another generation from now, so that the people who perpetrated the hoax wouldn't be persecuted. Do you know what I mean? How do you see? Let's put it this way. Let's put it this way in a hypothetical situation. Okay, the government is going to come forward with the truth about the moon hoax. How do you see that unfolding then?
Well, I imagine a lot of people will outright deny it. Other people will be, have a big cry over it and stuff. Other people will just, be able to get over it and stuff. Maybe they'll just be patriotic and say, maybe they had to lie to us because we needed to beat the Soviets and stuff. But some people just have to accept the fact. And once the world has accepted this fact that it's fake, okay, we need to now we can try to focus on doing it for real. We need to find out ways to shield the astronauts from the radiation. Because even on short-term missions, even a minor flare is as a hazard to a human. Back in the 1960s, we were told that minor solar flares could deliver 25 rem per hour, depending on how much shielding you had.
Right.
And but nowadays we're told, only the major flares can hurt you. And they say, there's no major flares during Apollo, when there was major flares during Apollo. You actually look up the comprehensive flare index for major flares. This is NOAA's information, and you find that there were major flares during this time. And so you got all this garbage that's just out there to propagate this bullshit by NASA. And once we get this bullshit out in the open, okay, maybe now we can start working out how to actually do it for real.
Yeah.
You know? Because like as long as we're living in this bullshit world, you know, we're essentially gone back to the Stone Age in space terms.
That's true. That's the issue I have with NASA. As I said, I'm still, I'm open-minded to the moon hoax theory idea, and I give it some credence, I guess you'd say, that I do find something very suspicious about the whole lunar missions, but I'm not on board necessarily with the outright idea of a hoax. And hopefully that does not, not sit well with you. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I respect and appreciate the research that you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like I said, if I can look through the telescope, what's called the VLT, and see if there's a lunar module up there, then I'll say, hey, I was wrong. Okay, congratulations, guys, you made it there. But if it turns out, there's nothing up there and stuff, well, then that's the proof, and maybe then we can finally move mankind forward.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, that's the hope that we can get this. No matter how it happens, I'd like to see the space program get back on its feet in a big way. But you're saying that it's limited by the natural problems of space flight that they refuse to acknowledge.
Yeah, and it's not just that too. Because of the Apollo program, we're getting so many wrong ideas about the moon and about space. Like the Apollo samples that NASA supposedly returned from the moon, turned out to be almost identical to terrestrial basalt. It had the same chemistry, same mineralogy, same oxygen isotope ratios.
Yeah.
If it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck's a duck, and now the Smart 1 probe that crashed into the moon finds out that the actual stuff that's up there is different. And that's effectively been swept under the rug. No one's ever, it was announced in the news, and then it was just shunned out of the spotlight completely. And God, I was taping the program when they first announced this stuff, eh? And so that's the whole issue. We're getting so much wrong information about space and about the moon because of NASA's bullshit. And when we need to, effectively, once we get this hoax officially exposed, we'll effectively have to relearn everything we now know about the moon stuff because of all this nonsense that NASA has put out.
That just makes you wonder if it'll ever come out. What about the idea that private space travel is going to unlock this mystery or solve this debate in a way where someone will die trying to go out to space, not you necessarily on this mission, but they'll run into the problems with the radiation belts, and then that'll open the door to the revelations that you're talking about.
Well, hopefully, private space adventures will contribute towards the expose of the thing. If I recall correctly, they've got the private organization Space Adventures. Of course, they're working with the Russian space program on this thing, which is one of NASA's partners and stuff. But of course, if we can, if anyone dies on the lunar tourism thing, okay, then we'll know for sure that this thing is fake. And then, of course, there's the other fellow, Richard Branson, the guy from Virgin Airlines and stuff. He's started up the group Virgin Galactic. I believe he said on the telly a while back that his ultimate goal is to put out a motel resort on the moon. Good luck with that.
Yeah. You're saying that's not even possible.
It's not even possible. If radiation is going to be such an issue during a simple moonwalk, when NASA supposedly returns to the moon, if you're going to have to be, parked inside a cave for most of the time you're up there, okay, then how are you going to build a motel resort on the moon? How are you going to build this base there? Because obviously, you're going to be having astronauts trying to build this thing, constantly bombarded by radiation, okay, and so it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. So unfortunately, people may very well die, in the process. Maybe some people might actually build a rocket, maybe and go to the moon thinking that they can get there because NASA said they can get there, and they end up dying in the process. It's people are going to have to learn the hard way. Unfortunately, it seems.
That is the case. If what you're saying is true, it's going to end up ugly. Yeah. That's for sure.
I know. So essentially, I feel obligated to put my life on the line, because I'm, as the grandson, I feel heavily involved in this thing, and I feel like if anyone should die just to prove that the radiation was deadly, it should be me. It should be me who goes up there, I think. You know, I'm not afraid to die for the sake of the truth. I always wanted to be an astronaut as a kid, and so, you know, if astronauts of old generations, they put their life on the line. Any mission could be deadly and stuff. And well, I feel it is my duty to put my life on the line for the sake of the truth.
All right. Well, I think that is commendable that you're, willing to put your life on the line here for this theory, and I'm sure, you'll take some flack from people, especially the moon landing proponents, that are so ardent about this. But, I commend you, for your passion about this subject. I think that, regardless of where I fall in the debate, I respect, the lengths you're willing to go to, raise awareness of this issue and this debate. Now, what else is, pertinent to this whole conversation? I'm sure, you've put out 400-plus videos. So, I mean, I ask you this question with trepidation because I know we could go another, hour and a half here talking more about the moon hoax and all the implications of it. But what sort of stuff may have fallen through the cracks here that we should make sure we cover here on this, your initial appearance on the program?
As I told you before, I recently managed to meet up with Adam Savage and Phil Plait at that convention. I also managed to meet up with Buzz Aldrin. Mm-hmm. Buzz Aldrin, the supposed second man on the moon and stuff. I was like, as we were talking about the moon rocks earlier and stuff. Recently, this was one of the subjects I had planned on meaning to delve into during the 40th anniversary, was the fact that shortly afterwards, right, one of the moon rocks that was on display in the Dutch Museum, which was a gift to former Dutch Prime Minister Willem Drees. Okay, it turned out to be a piece of petrified wood, and this was given out to the guy during the Apollo 11 astronauts goodwill tour. See, they toured the world and stuff. During their time in Amsterdam, they were accompanied by the American ambassador. Now, basically, they, from what I understand, they gave this moon rock to the ambassador, who presented it to the former Dutch Prime Minister. And so the ambassador, he was commenting on these lines, and he said, I didn't know that this thing was. He was very interested in the rock, but I didn't know it was fake. That's news to me.
Yeah.
And so basically Aldrin, he was appearing in Sydney this last October, right? And basically he was at the Australian Geographic Awards night. And basically I purchased tickets to that, and I contacted the organisers to ask if it was possible to arrange an interview with him, because I had a few questions I wanted to ask him. One of them was obviously the Dutch moon rock thing.
Right.
And basically they told me it wasn't possible to schedule individual interviews and stuff, but they invited me to to his press conference. He was giving an actual press conference during just the night before the day before the actual ceremony.
Yeah.
And so I went there with two cameras. I was sitting in the front row and stuff, and I asked him the question. I asked when you're in possession of this supposed moon rock, were you aware that this was petrified wood, or were you also led to believe that this was a genuine moon rock? And he was like, petrified wood. Oh, that doesn't sound like that came from the moon. Then he started saying, okay, maybe they must have switched the moon sample and stuff. So he seemed very uncomfortable answering that question and stuff. It certainly took him by. So he certainly wasn't expecting someone to ask him that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very strange.
So after that, yeah, I know. And so I had a few questions I wanted to ask him, but I only was able to ask him one. And the very next day, the Sydney Morning Herald, they jumped on that and alleged that I was some antagonistic gatecrasher who had to be removed by security. This has been the article title. Yeah, I know. It was in the newspapers. Security, we have a problem.
Oh my God!
I complained. I know. They just turned it into a media frenzy. It brings us back to the whole issue of the propagandists and stuff. Because like if a conspiracy theorist talks to an Apollo astronaut or one of their fellow propagandists and stuff, okay, that's always, oh, he stalked him, he ambushed him and stuff. But if anyone else speaks to them, okay, they're good guys. Like when I went up with Plait and Savage at Cam 8, they alleged that I was a stalker, that I had stalked them to there, I ambushed them and stuff. Well, I paid $175 to gain entry into that venue, okay, and Plait and Savage were very open about their appearance there. I had as much right to be there as did anyone else who paid to get in, and being a documentary filmmaker, that makes me eligible to be granted an interview with the speakers.
Right.
So I did not ambush anyone. I did not stalk anyone. you know. And the same case with Buzz Aldrin. You know, I was invited to this thing.
Well, do you think then that maybe, just to get really meta on this, that, you know, I joked earlier that he was the wacky uncle of moon hoax theory, but do you think maybe that's sort of like the Bart Sibrellification of moon hoax theory? I mean, in a lot of ways, I think he might have hurt the theory. I think he might have hurt the research community of you guys who are advancing moon hoax theory, because it became such like a national joke that he was punched by Buzz Aldrin for asking if they went to the moon, you know, and now you're being painted sort of like he was. They're sort of insinuating you acted, you know, in a way that he behaved.
Yeah, well, I didn't act any way where he behaved. You know, I was very civil and stuff. You can see the video on YouTube. It's Jarrow White meets Buzz Aldrin and stuff. I was very, very polite. I didn't insinuate anything against him. You know, I was just giving him the benefit of the doubt. You know, Mr. Aldrin, this rock turned out to be fake. You know, can you please tell me what your side of the story? But were you aware this was fake, or were you also were you also led to believe this was a genuine moon rock? You know, I was just giving him the benefit of the doubt, you know, and so he answered it, and then the media turns it into a frenzy. They actually compared me to Bart Sibrel. In fact, they said that my actions were like similar to that. It's all in the Sydney Morning Herald.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, so how, you know, I complained
bitterly about that. And only after I showed them my invitation, they published my email below the article. You know, and but you know, some people have suggested I sue the bastards.
Yeah, well, then you could fund your trip to the moon.
Yeah, that's an idea. There's an idea. Yeah. Anyway, so far I've raised about $329. Okay, and you know, I still need to raise $200 million. But if any believers in the moon landing are listening out there, if anyone wants to put the money where their mouth is, you know, they've constantly said I wouldn't be convinced if I was flown there and shown the artifacts. Well, if anyone wants to put their money where their mouth is, feel free to send a donation. The PayPal address is flyjarretttothemoon@gmail.com. Okay, you just send in any money. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be small. It can be any price that you want. Okay, it all adds up. And I'll be sure to acknowledge that you sent the price. I can keep your email sensitive. I can keep your identity sensitive if you prefer. You know, if you want to remain anonymous, that's fine. Anonymous donor, that's all right. And I'll be sure to post a video and saying, okay, you sent me this money. The price is the total amount is now this.
Yeah.
And so I've made it. Yeah. So I'll be continuing to fund this thing. You know, until I either raise the money or I'm deemed unfit or too old for space travel, I guess. I believe there's an age limit. There's an age limit, and at the rate they keep shipping the supposed return date back into the future, I'll be a bloody granddad before they actually set a proper date or something.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's a good segue here to sort of the wrap up question. You know, between now and when you're deemed unfit to be sent to the moon, what do you have planned, you know, for the rest of this year, for the next few years, for the immediate future? You know, you said you sort of started this out with one long essay that was practically a book. Have you thought about, you know, as the grandson of moon hoax theory, putting out that third generation book to act as the capper to Casing and Renee, you know, a third book, if you will, for this moon hoax lineage, genealogy, the latest on the moon hoax theory? What do you have cooking? Potential book, maybe putting this all together into a full-length documentary? What can we look forward to in the future from Jarrow White?
Well, as I said before, the essay itself needed a bit of editing. Like, I needed to strip down a few of the less than pleasant things I had to say about my opponents. You know, because back then you tend to get pretty angry at times every now and then. But you know, I managed to develop a sort of tolerance. Anyone will say I'm very polite in my videos, and so I tend to keep the same style in my films. So, but project-wise, I've got a 8 or so hour documentary series coming up. It's called Moonfaker, Moon Rocks Revisited, which is basically a look at various new material regarding Apollo samples and moon rocks and stuff that has, you know, surfaced since they originally put together Moonfaker Exhibit D, which discussed moon rocks and the alleged laser reflectors and stuff like that. And basically, a lot has come up since then. You know, there's been some criticisms made, and there's been a whole lot of new material popping up out of the woodwork. You know, and there's also some stuff that I missed completely that I felt I should have worked into there. And so basically this 8-hour thing which I've been working on for the past year now, it's nearly finished. I've only got about 2 films left to complete. Okay, I had to chop it up into each individual episode. So each episode is like maybe an hour or half an hour or so long and stuff. So this film series as a total is about 8 hours or so in length. It covers everything. And so, that should hopefully be out in April next month. In fact, by the time this radio show is on the internet, it might already be up there by then.
Probably,
and,
yeah.
I've also got a new website coming up, moonfaker.com, which will basically have frequently asked questions page, a site where people can view all my videos, and various places where people can actually, contact me, like ask a question or send in donations for my fundraise or request an interview like you're doing right now, obviously, and so yeah, hopefully that should be out around the same time as the Moon Rocks Revisited series, and I've got many more projects underway, but that's the big one that I've been working on for the past year or so. I started in around April last year, I think it was. And I've just been working on it since. I've been accumulating all the stuff that had happened, since the release of my first Moon Rock series, and now, all the stuff that I missed, all the stuff that came up, like the Dutch Moon Rock thing, the L Cross impact, and many other things that has happened, and so I've managed to all work in there, and I'll also be challenging the various criticisms that some propagandists have made in response to my original video on moon samples. And so, yeah, that should all be out in April.
Awesome. Well, folks should definitely look out for that. And if they want more from you, they can go to youtube.com/whitegera, and you spell the whole thing, obviously, youtube.com, then slash the word white, WHITEJARRAH, or go to moonmovie.com, and hopefully moonfaker.com will be up and running soon. And, of course, links can be found all over Banal of America, so you'll be able to get your hands on this information from Gera White.
I also recommend the Bill Casing Tribute site and, of course, Ralph Renee's site, to get their message out. You can go to ralphrenee.com, to get Renee's book, and you can go to the Bill Casing Tribute site, which is billcasing.com, which is a site in honor of the grandfather.
There you go. All right, yeah, so be sure to check out those sites as well. And, I got to thank you here, Gera, for coming on the show. I know you're like 15, 16 hours ahead of me there, so I actually woke you up by accident because I was confused about the time difference. So I really appreciate you taking some time out of your Sunday morning to appear on the program here. Fascinating discussion on this moon hoax theory. As I said, I'm sort of on the fence about this. I don't totally discount what you guys are saying, and I think that there was definitely something very fishy going on. So I find your work to be pretty fascinating, and I watched the debate with quite a rapt expression. Enjoying the battle that goes on here between you guys and the propagandists, and whether you agree or disagree with Gera's point of view on the moon hoax, you got to give him credit for being a warrior here in the world of esoterica and really putting in the hard work, putting in the travel miles, and really willing to go above and beyond, and as he said, right up to the precipice of doom, if not death, to prove that the moon landing was hoaxed. So, kudos to you, Gera. I wish you the best of luck. Hopefully this isn't the last time we talk, and keep me posted and keep the listeners here posted on, the latest developments here in your research into the moon hoax theory.
No worries. It was a pleasure being on here, and I hope to be on the show again if you want me back, and thanks a lot. Thanks. It's been wonderful. It's been a time and a half.
That does it for this installment of BOA Audio Season 6. Big thanks to Gera White for coming on the show. Check out his websites, moonmovie.com, moonfaker.com, and youtube.com/whitegera. And you spell that WHITEJARRAH. And now, before we say goodbye to Gera White, he wrote to me, having heard the interview before we aired it, and want to just clarify one mistake that he made. He says that in the interview he said that Bill Kaysing learned of Thomas Ronald Barron before his chat with John Grant, but actually it was vice versa, although Kaysing was very aware of the Apollo 1 fire prior to his discussion with Grant. So there you go, that applies to the part we were talking about the Apollo fire. So a little clarification there from Jera White. Doesn't want to get those propagandists in a tizzy over a slip of the tongue. Totally understood. Moving right along now, we're going to skip BOA Audio listener feedback because, first of all, it's been like 3 weeks since we produced an episode, and a lot of people are talking and are outraged or confused by what's going on. So I want to address all that and sort of clear things up so people know what's going on with the program. It's ironic. It's been a just tumultuous season here, season 6, trying to get these shows out to you. All these different technical problems almost since the very beginning of the season, definitely since the start of the year. It's been just crazy, starting with us having to drop all of the theme music from previous episodes, and then a whole bunch of other stuff, culminating, of course, in the double episode we put out on April 25th. I'm an idiot, really, is one big way to put it, because I thought it was going to be great that we put out 2 episodes in one day, and I just did not account for the huge amount of bandwidth that was going to take, and it blew out our servers in Canada, the folks who were hosting the show for us, and they'd had enough. They threw up their hands. They said, BOA Audio is out of here, man, and they shut down the whole archive of programs. So if you're trying to listen to the show right now, well, if you're trying to listen to the show here in 2011, May of 2011, I should just go back and edit this out sometime in the future when everything's all straightened out. But nonetheless, if you're listening to the program here in May of 2011 and you can't hear it streaming audio-wise, and you can't get the show via iTunes, and you can't download the full show MP3s from the site, that's because our hosts up there in Canada pulled the whole shebang down. That happened literally the day we put out the double episode. So we had to scramble and find out what we were going to do. And luckily, we have struck up a deal here with our new audio host / distributor. I think I'm just going to call them our audio distributor here going forward, because that's really what they're going to be doing for us in a huge way. Of course, I'm talking about cyberears.com. They're the folks who have helped us out in a big way. Big props to the folks at Paratopia who suggested I get in touch with the guys at Cyber Ears. So where was I? Let me get back on track here with this story. So we reached out to Cyber Ears, came to an understanding, and we are bringing the program over to Cyber Ears. They're going to be hosting the BOA Audio MP3s, and they are going to be doing the streaming audio for us as well, which is huge. From a technical standpoint, folks, up until this past couple of weeks in this big imbroglio, we had been really running the whole operation on 2005, 2006 technology here, the stuff that I learned when I first created the program. And along the way, little bugs seem to be piling up over the years that we just could not get around to fixing. By moving the whole show over to Cyber Ears, it's going to be so much smoother. They're going to take care of the whole iTunes feed. They're going to have a whole bunch of additional stuff that I just never could even come up with, stuff that'll tie into like the iPhone and the Android and stuff like that there's no way I'd be able to do. And they're going to be reliable because they are geared towards hosting and distributing podcasts. So that's the perfect place for BOA Audio, and a much better operation than what I've been doing the last 5 years, which is running the whole distribution wing of BOA Audio myself. Quite frankly, the technology is beyond me at this point, and I need to bring in some professionals who know something about distributing podcasts. So that's what we're doing here with the Cyber Ears folks. They are outstanding, and I couldn't be happier to be working with them. And it takes a huge stress off of my plate because it's going to just clear a lot of work for me in the long run. So it's a good sign for BOA Audio. It's a great turn of events. I know things have been crazy here this season. We're going to get it all back on track. Don't worry. We're in the midst of switching the entire BOA Audio archive over to Cyber Ears. Once that's done, all the links and everything else is going to be fixed at Banal of America. It's quite a project. We had to take out, obviously, all the theme music that we'd used in the past and replace it with the songs that have been contributed by the BOA Audio listeners, so you'll be hearing that kind of stuff, too, when the archive gets freshly posted. And I'd say we're at about 3/4 of the way done with that. I think we just have to get seasons 4 and 5 taken care of, and then all the past episodes here from season 6 thrown up there. But we're in good shape as far as that goes, but it's quite the project. I'd like to say that BOA Audio is going to continue unabated here over the next few weeks, and I'm pretty sure it will. We got a great episode lined up for you next week. It may not be next week, maybe 2 weeks from now, but that's how the program rolls, folks. That's how it's going to have to keep going, because that's what BOA Audio has evolved into. And so, to wrap it all up, BOA Audio Archive took a huge hit from our previous hosts. We found new hosts. We're moving it over there. That's why things have been crazy for us the last few weeks. It's ironic because right before that happened, it seemed like everything was going on full cylinders. We were back and up and running in a big way, and then boom, just got nailed with a huge, huge pain in the ass, but something that in the long run is going to be enormously beneficial to the program. I could keep rambling about this. If you have any other questions, feel free to shoot me a line, boaaudio@hotmail.com, or go to binallofamerica.com, BINNALL of America.com, and click the contact button. Or just find me on Facebook or Twitter, or join up at the official BOA forum, theusofe.com, theusofe.com, or go to Binall of America and click the forum button. Don't worry about the program. I've gotten a lot of emails from people who were very confused by what was going on here, because just you couldn't get any of our old shows all of a sudden, and were really wondering and worried about us. Don't worry, everything's fine. You know, people are freaking out too much. Everything's cool. It's been crazy, but that's what happens when you reach the level that Binall of America has. It is just small problems are enormous problems. That's really the best way to put it. That's how it ends up here on the show and at BOA. Speaking of which, why don't we do the thanks part of the show now? Allow me to give my just unending thanks and appreciation to the outstanding and esteemed BOA staff: Leslie Chiron, Regan Lee, Joe V, Tina Senna, Rochelle Hawks, Richard Thomas, Marla Pena, Bruce Pretty, Tony Morrill, our contributing cartoonist, Andy Carolyn, and our webmaster, Jeremy Boston. There, I got them all in that time. You guys are the best. Thank you for sticking with BOA during this rough stretch. We've got a ton of columns from these guys that I've been dying to put up and get posted at BOA. So come on over to the website. You're hearing me right now, so you know I'm telling the truth. There's tons of cool stuff at Binall of America right now. We say it all the time, and it is the truth, my friends. If you're only listening to BOA Audio and you're not reading the columns at Binall of America, then you're only getting half of the story. BOA, make it a part of your everyday search for esoteric news and opinion. Normally, this is the part of the program where we have to turn to you folks out there and ask to make a donation to BOA and BOA Audio. But as we have been plugging on the last few installments of the program, we are helping to produce a film with Red Star Films titled Beyond Best Evidence, the UFO Enigma. It's going to feature a whole bunch of really awesome names in the world of ufology, giving us their perspectives on what it all means, what this UFO phenomenon is at the end of the day. And we are crowdsourcing the funding for this project, so we want you guys to help us out and help us to make it happen, if you can, of course. You can go to indiegogo.com/UFO. Once again, Indiegogo, indiegogo.com/UFO for more information and find out about our donor system. Each different level of donation comes with a whole bunch of different cool stuff. So you're not just getting a thanks and a pat on the back, you're actually getting access to interesting aspects of the production or just cool bonus benefits. So check out indiegogo.com/UFO for more information on Beyond Best Evidence, the UFO Enigma. Now let's talk a little bit about who we have lined up for you on the next edition of BOA Audio. We're going to be looking at the film that is really generating a lot of buzz in the world of esoterica right now, talking about Eyes of the Mothman, and we've got Matthew Pawlowski and Anastasia Constantino on the program to talk about it. This thing was really the brainchild of Matthew Pawlowski. He's the director and creator of the film, and Anastasia was one of the staff and crew behind the whole project. She may have even been a producer. I don't have the information right in front of me, but nonetheless, Matthew was sort of the die-hard Mothman enthusiast, and Anastasia was sort of someone who hadn't heard of the story before and really got knee-deep into the mess when they made Eyes of the Mothman. Now, I feel kind of bad saying this, but I should point out Eyes of the Mothman is streaming on Netflix right now, so anybody out there with Netflix can actually watch this film in anticipation or follow up to our interview here with Matthew Pawlowski and Anastasia Constantino. I may not say that on the episode next week because I don't want to really hurt these guys. I don't know how you get paid if your show is already on Netflix. But since we're talking to the hardcore BOA audio listeners and you've been waiting so long for another edition of BOA, I figured I'd give you a little heads up that for those folks with Netflix streaming, you can check out Eyes of the Mothman right now. We're going to be talking about the Mothman phenomenon. We're going to be talking about the film. A lot of weird stuff happened in the making of Eyes of the Mothman. You're going to hear about that stuff. Really wild stuff. Tune in next time on BOA Audio. Matthew Pawlowski, Anastasia Constantino, the makers of Eyes of the Mothman. And on that note, let's close the book on another edition of BOA Audio Season 6. Big thanks once again to Jera White for coming on the show. No folks to thank for listener feedback. We'll bring it back next time around, I promise. And the only folks left to thank, of course, are you guys out there listening right now. The hardcore BOA audio listeners, the ones who stick around to the very end when my voice is dying and I don't have anything else to say. Thank you guys for your support. I love making this program. I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. Don't stress out. Things are just going to get bigger and better from here. Thank you for making BOA Audio a part of your esoteric audio playlist. Until next time, this is Tim Binnall, thanking you for listening and signing off.